Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good to see you all here. Boy, what a nice crowd we have here tonight. No? Better?
Sure is.
How about now? Better? No? It's on. I think I heard that. I don't see anything to turn the volume up.
Nope, you don't. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Testing, 1, 2,
Is that
3.
better? All right.
Sorry, guys.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Is it working for me too? Yes? Ah, very good. All right, let's try this one more time, shall we? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the January 20th Planning Board meeting. We appreciate you being here with us this evening. Madam Chair, could we have a roll call of members, please? Did I say
Yes,
Madam?
you said Madam Chair.
Madam Secretary. Unless you got promoted, perhaps.
Mr. Barhu,
Present.
Mr. McLean.
Here.
Mr. Robinson. Present. Mr. Servance,
Present.
Mr. Weatherholtz,
Present.
and Ms. Washington, present. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 3, approval of the minutes for the December 19, 2024 Planning Board meeting. Do I have a motion, please?
Make a motion that we approve minutes as written. Second.
Thank you. Any
I
discussion?
second. I second.
He,
Thank you, Tony. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Move forward. Any citizens that would like to address the board tonight, and I have a feeling there's a few of you, we'd ask you, if you haven't already done so, to fill out the green comment form. And when you come to the lectern, we'd ask you to state your name and address for the record. And I'd like to also ask this, since we have a large number of folks here tonight, and a lot of folks that want to express their views. There are times in situations like this where they'll just ask for a raise of hands, who's for, who's against. We're not going to do that tonight. We think we owe you better than that. But what I would ask you to listen and look at it this way, that if you have people that have made certain points, whether it's for or against an item, and you are going to make similar points, I would ask you to come up with your name and address and just say ditto. That, and we will take that to mean all the talking points that's been discussed, you feel the same way with that. We want to be respectful of your time, the time of our staff people here and our members as well. So if you would consider that, I would certainly, and I think our board and staff would appreciate it. So thank you for that.
Mr. Chair, before you move forward.
Yes.
Mr. Barhu made a motion. I didn't hear who did the second. Or Tony Servance. Thank you.
There we go. We got to keep these things straight. So, okay, we're going to move on to item 4A, and I wanted to mention that the applicant had requested that we separate those two items that have the small-scale comprehensive plan and also the rezone, and we're going to talk about them separately. In some cases, we're able to combine items in that way to be able to hear everything and then vote separately. What we're going to do tonight is separate them out. Hopefully, that'll be helpful for all you folks in the audience to be able to understand what is trying to be done a little better. So with that, if we could hear from staff. Sir, how are you?
Good
Hey,
evening.
Doug.
Doug Terry, Planning with the City. Nice to see you guys again. Don't think I'm going to be coughing tonight. We'll see. Anyway, this is a small-scale comp plan amendment. Golf Villas is a request by Rob Merrill, Cobb Cole, for approval of the small-scale changing future land use map designation to level 1 residential for 36.5 acres, and also a new neighborhood policy and issue. Property is generally located in the southwest of International Golf Drive and Champions Drive intersection. This is the aerial showing it's not developed. Parcel consists of 36.5 acres. And they propose to amend the comp plan as follows: change future land use map from golf 20.98 acres, office transition 13.89 acres, and retail 1.63 acres to level 1 residential. They also propose a new issue and policy for neighbor T for 36.5 acres. Basically, they're limiting the density to 120 single-family lots, which would be equivalent to 3.9 units per acre. Showing the current land use, showing the golf, OT, and retail, and going to level 1 residential. The urban services necessary are adequate. Currently, the office transition allows a density of 40 units per acre and has an FAR of 3. Retail allows for a density of 40 units per acre and FAR 3. That, if it were today developed without doing a map amendment, you can generate 620 dwelling units, or FAR of 3 would be over 2 million square feet of non-residential. So the proposed land use, level 1 allows for a density of 8 and no FAR for a total of 292 acres if they didn't limit it to 120. However, it is limited to 120. The potential net decrease of 145,800 gallons per day for both water and wastewater, and a potential net decrease of 7,973 peak hour trips, and 84,656 potential average daily trips, ADP, from the maximum allowed by the current land uses. Staff finds that the small-scale amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It does not represent urban sprawl. And the city of Daytona Beach has available capacity to serve the demand of available water and sewer. Based on staff analysis and review, staff recommends approval of the proposed future land use map amendment, 36.5 acres, from golf, 20.9 acres, to office transition, 13.89, and retail, 1.63 acres, to level 1 residential. And the new neighborhood T issue and policy limiting the density to 3.9 acres dwelling units per acre, or 120 single-family units. Majority vote of the planning board members present voting is required to recommend approval with conditions or denial to this policy to the city commission. The item is tentatively scheduled to be heard by the city commission, first reading on March 5th, and a second reading on March 19th. This concludes staff's presentation.
And Doug, before we ask you a question or two, if I could ask Madam Secretary to actually read the item that I forgot to ask you to do.
Thank you.
Please, it's item 4A. Having a good day
I
so far.
thought you'd taken my job.
Thank you.
Item number 1, I'm sorry, this is item number 2. 4A, LPGA Golf Villas, Small Scale Comprehensive Plan Amendment, SSCPA, DEV 2022-094, legislative hearing.
Very good, thank you. Doug, I understand that this particular situation has been something that we have seen different versions of this in the past. How long of a period has it been, and how many iterations have we looked at prior to tonight?
I believe it's been since 2022, and 3 iterations. First had townhomes and single family, and then it had single family, and then reduction of that.
And let me just point out, those iterations were actually, related to the PD rezoning and not the land use change. The land use change was always the level 1 residential that was going to be moving forward. So I just want to make sure we keep those separate.
No, I appreciate that, Dennis. Thank you.
It also had the text amendment to reduce what's the amount of units, even when it was like 144. It could have been more, so it was limited to that. Now the new one is limited to 120.
I just wanted to make a statement because I can see a couple of people raising their hand out in the audience. Please, you will have your chance to speak, but it'll be in the portion of the program where we ask for speakers.
Doug Gutierrez, I'm the planning manager, City of Daytona Beach.
Okay, no problem. I'm glad to help. Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, thank you, Doug. Appreciate it very much. And, oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Robinson, I didn't see that hand wave. I apologize.
Welcome back, Mr. Doug. Just a few clarification from you. Is it still going to be a golf course there?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it's not
And-
impacting that. It's not impacting that.
It's not going to impact that.
Folks, please.
You're going to have your chance. Thank you. Now, on page 13 of your report, you said there's a net decrease. My question to you is, how did you arrive at a net decrease when we're adding 120 homes to the,
Please, folks.
let him, you'll get your chance. Can you explain?
Sure, this is a reduction from what the current use allows, 620 units. This is a big reduction to 120, so definitely will show a decrease in utilities and traffic.
So am I to understand then that you're saying that initially there was going to be 600 and some homes?
That's what's permitted
That was,
Right now.
okay.
Comparing-
That's what permitted.
right now.
Right now, 640 homes. However, they're going to only build 120 homes. Okay, but in reality, what is there now that would indicate a net decrease in the capacity?
Mr. Robinson, this is a land use change, so it's looking at maximum potentials.
Okay.
So it's looking at what the maximum current potential is, and then what they're requesting the maximum potential to be. So that's why we see the net decrease.
Permitted as opposed to requested, if that
Okay.
helps.
Okay, so then this is not the reality of what is there now.
Well, the reality of physically of what's there now is the vacant property. What we're talking about in a land use change is what the land use would currently permit.
Right.
And that's what Doug is doing the analysis on. That's what the analysis represents. The current land use versus what is being proposed with the land use. That's really the reduction.
So that's how you're right, your net decrease.
Correct.
It was confusing because when I'm looking at it, I'm saying, wait a minute, you put 120 homes, so you're going to decrease the resources when adding additional use to property. But I
Let's look at maximum impact,
okay,
and it's a litmus test on capacity.
gotcha.
So if they were able, and they would be, but if they were able, 620 units or 2 million square feet of residential, that's the number they look at potential trips and sewer and water. It's not actual, it would be more towards when they get to the plat or site plan level. That's when the concurrency comes in. But basically, this is showing that, potentially this much, and with this change, it'll be this much.
And that's how you arrive at the peak trip.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. I was a little bit confused in that. I appreciate it. Thank you.
It's hard to reduce trips on vacant land, so I can understand where that could be a bit confusing. Any other questions for staff? Because I know Rob's dying to get up here to speak to us. Always good to see him. With that, could we hear from the applicant, please?
Some people had to.
Mr. Chair, board members, Rob Merrill with Cobb Cole, 1 Daytona Boulevard. I appreciate the bifurcation of the agenda items on this, and I'll explain why, at least from my perspective. Typically, when we're doing comp plan amendments and rezonings, in this case PD plan development, which is a custom zoning, they normally go hand in hand because you're changing the comprehensive plan future land use map designation to match the zoning that you're asking for. Very typical. So we put them together to save time for you guys, so we can talk about them at the same time, then you can vote on them separately. In this case, I think, and I'll probably get some hisses in the background, but I think even the people that are behind me that are here to talk about the project, when they see the comp plan piece of it versus the development plan piece of it, which is part of the zoning, request, I think they're going to see that what we're doing here is in their favor. So a little bit Yeah, I was this is what I was thinking, or at least I got some chuckles.
You knew that was
At
coming.
least I got a couple chuckles. So historical context is really important for you guys. I think you know that LPA was a developed region pact at one point, which those of you that have been around the planning and zoning world long enough know that no longer exists. It's no longer a regulatory requirement. But years ago, it was actually a very multi-jurisdictional plan review. It was like a giant PD or a super PD. So it was a cut and fit zoning for a piece of property. It went through city, county, regional planning agency, and multiple levels of state review in order to get it approved. And that's what happened in this case with the LPGA DRI. So a lot of things came out of that. And on this particular piece of land, the reason why you see those designations for office transition and retail and golf mixed onto this piece of property is because that's what was envisioned on this piece. So if you think about it, all the houses that were built out there, having a commercial corner right there didn't really seem like a bad idea. And that was approved in the regional planning agency. It went to the regional planning council for its approval. Department of Community Affairs in Tallahassee, which no longer exists, DEP, all the other DOT agencies look at that, and that was part of the decision making for both this retail corner and the office transition. Now, when Doug was talking about in Milverton, you asked good questions because this isn't about us coming in and asking for something that was agriculturally zoned and comprehensive planned for housing. This is something that was designated for uses that are, in many cases, much higher intensity than what surrounds them. The office transition allows 40 dwelling units per acre. If you want to build houses or apartments there, you could do that at 40 units per acre. That's the reason, combined with the retail, which also allows 40 units per acre, and it could be retail. When you're comparing it, you're comparing the existing condition under the future land use and the proposed condition. Now, what we did in this case was, and one of the reasons why I think looking at the progression of what happened with all the meetings and things that we've had with folks, which Park Lynchburg and Matthew West are here, they're going to do a PowerPoint presentation that kind of gives you a little bit of the snapshot of what we've been through in the last few years to get to this point. Before I do that, I just want to talk a little bit about this higher level plan. So if you find entitlements for the single family, for the golf, the multifamily allowed in the retail, and the multifamily allowed in the office transition, that's where you got the maximum of 120 dwelling units. Again, this is comp plan world. It's not necessarily world where you can go out and build a building yet, right? It's a plan. What we did was we said, you know what? It already has zoning, and this is something I want to say a couple times. It already has single family residential level 5 zoning on the entire property. So it's got the single family zoning on the whole thing. It's got office transition, retail, and golf underlying future land use. So it's mixed up. It's a mixed up situation that I think needs to be remedied. I think even folks that think it's fun back will, once they understand, will realize that what I'm asking you for is a lot less than what we have now. So not only do we say, why don't we match up the zoning with the land use and call it low residential, level 1 residential future land use. On top of that, we put a limiting policy, which you guys have seen us do this in other cases, in the text of the comprehensive plan that is attributable only to this property, and limits it to 120 units total on the land. So we're going from a maximum potential entitlement of 620 units to a maximum entitlement of 120 units. So that's what's happening here. No more, no less. We're not talking about flooding concerns or stormwater requirements. I hope you guys are getting this. We're not talking about, architecture. We're not talking about landscaping. We're not talking about, traffic impacts, other than looking at the entitlement going down so much that by definition, without debate. Now, there will be debate, I'm sure, but I think without debate, my estimation, what we're asking for versus what we have is a lessening of intensity, a lessening of density, a reduction in potential future impacts based on future land classification. So I think if you want to talk about all the zoning stuff, that's fine. I mean, we can talk about whatever we need to get you guys to a vote on this future land use change. But please keep in mind one thing. It's mathematical, not debatable. The maximum of one thing and a maximum of another thing. That's all it is. No more, no less. So with that, I'm going to ask Parker to show the PowerPoint to you guys. And you'll get a flavor for kind of what we've been going through here. And he can talk about a little more granular level, what those pre-post conditions are, and Matt's going to do the same thing in traffic.
And Parker, Parker, before you get started, if you would, I know you got a PowerPoint presentation. If there's anything associated with the PD rezoning, if you would just kind of put that off to the side, we want to make sure we keep these things separate. But if you want to talk about process, but if you want to talk about details of what might be in the zoning, I think it's best that you hold off on that.
Okay, we have a PowerPoint presentation that kind of just gives the history of the initial plan through to the current plan. So I don't really have a good way to not kind of go through that process, but we started and how we got to where we're at.
Well, no, that's what,
How we started and how we got to where we're at.
well, no, that's what the goal is here. So
Right.
do your best to separate that as much as you can, please.
So I'm not sure which button to push.
I know that feeling.
We'll get it started. There you go.
Okay. Okay, Parker Mitchenberg, 1729 Ridgewood Avenue. I'm a professional engineer, landscape architect, own and operate Parker Mitchenberg and Associates. So this first slide is an aerial, and what you'll see here is the existing driving range for the golf course. And then there are 3 currently practice holes that we call hole number 1, hole number 2, hole number 3, that surround the existing driving range, and next to the driving range is existing preserved wetland. So I just want to give you a feel for it's at the intersection of International Golf Drive and Champions Drive. Kind of at the top of the aerial is the parking lot for the golf course, kind of the westerly parking lot, west of the clubhouse and the cart barn. So when we first came into the city, we had 2 parcels, and one of the parcels you'll see townhouse boundary, and then below you'll see single family boundary. So this next slide is the townhouse boundary, and the developer, when we first came in, was requesting 54 townhomes, and I'm going to call this the north parcel, and then 109 single family lots on the south parcel. And these 2 developments replaced 2 of the practice holes, practice hole number 1 and practice hole number 3. At the time, the practice hole number 2 was going to be converted from being a practice hole into a short game practice area where it would have greens and sand traps and things you could pitch to, and I'm going to show you a drawing of that. Okay, let me go back to the aerial. So if you look at the right side of the image on the driving range, that's where, if I go out and want to play golf, I get a bucket of balls and I hit balls from right to left. You'll see a little shaded area on the left side right by the D in driving range. That's the members' tees, and my wife many years ago went out with Craig Shanklin and had lessons on those tees, so I've been there before.
Well, please, we're not going to have discussion from the audience with the presentation, so let this continue, please. Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Please.
Okay, so we've got a few of these slides, back 12, 13, 22. We had a neighborhood meeting at the Holiday Inn, and I got there early and put up my drawings, and Rob got there late because he couldn't find a parking spot. And, the room held about 100 people, and about 200 people showed up. So Rob wasn't very popular that night. He had to announce that if everybody can't get in and here, we're going to have to reschedule. So we ended up rescheduling to the Baptist Church, and I'll get to that next. So this was the original practice hole number 2 short game practice area that we presented, and it would have replaced practice hole number 2, which is a regular golf hole with a tee and a green, to a practice area where members could practice golf. After we had a couple meetings, there was resistance to the townhouse project, even though kind of in the above left-hand corner is a project that I believe is quadruplexes that I had designed many years ago. So as a result of, negotiating with the neighbors, and we had a couple different meetings. We had our full meetings with all the public invited. Then we probably had 5 or 6 meetings with Commissioner Cantu and a more abbreviated group of folks to try to get what their issues were and try to come to some consensus or, resolution of them. So as a result of that first meeting, the townhouses went from the 50-plus townhouses to 35 single-family lots. And the single-family portion went to 109 single-family lots. And at that time, in working with the staff, there was discussion about having a public park. So as a result of that, you'll see up by where it says Champions Drive, we proposed a small public park with a top lot, and I got a picture of it that better describes it, and 109 single-family lots. So this was the public park parcel, and you don't see it on this image, but this whole area is wooded, and you'll see that coming up. So then we had another one of our smaller meetings, and nobody from the neighborhood wanted a public park. They basically didn't want somebody that doesn't live in LPGA to come into the community and use this tot lot. So kind of through that negotiation, we eliminated the public park. And I'll show you that image here in a minute. Also, there was discussion with the folks that lived across the street from where this driveway intersected, Champions Drive, that didn't want the street, the headlights kind of shining right in their front door. So we ended up adjusting the location of this roadway to be on a lot line instead of directly in the middle of the lot. And you can see the aerial of the house. And that was the intent of that was to have headlights leaving these lots to not be directed into the living room, more along the lot line. So this is some more meeting dates, 5/8/23, 5/31, 7/24. Had a staff meeting, 1/31. And at each of these meetings, there were discussions about what they liked and what they didn't like about the plan. And we attempted to mitigate some of those concerns. So the third plan, we ended up generating this because they didn't like the fact of, the second north parcel. So we agreed to drop the development on the north parcel, concentrate the development on the south parcel. By doing that, we ended up taking out the practice hole number 1 and 2, and we moved the short game practice area to hole number 3, and there's an image of that coming up. So this was 124 single-family lots. And what I want to point out on this, in the upper right-hand corner, you see the access that lines up with the golf course parking lot. It cuts through a treed area. To the left of that area was the public park that I showed you before that now had been deleted. And we were able to keep about a couple acres there on both sides of where that exit goes out to the north, treed, as it currently is treed. This was the image of the practice hole number 3, and this is the current image. If we're successful, hole number 3 would be converted to a short game practice area. We had quite a few discussions about making sure we had enough parking. That was some of the issues, but this is the current practice hole number 3. So then I had a meeting that Rob couldn't make, and the discussion at that meeting was, can you not have that entrance to the north? We'd rather not have that traffic. Come on. Okay, so this is the current plan, and it did finally work. Let me go back. I'm a little faster than this thing is. Okay. So again, I want to have your attention in the upper right-hand corner. You see the big treat area, and that's right behind the kind of the public tees for the driving range. That image I showed you before had a road cutting through the middle of it. So after discussion with the smaller group of the neighbors, we pulled the access to this south development parcel to not extend to the north. We ended up dropping a few more lots, and we got down to the 120 current lots. One of the other things that I wanted to mention, there was discussion about construction traffic. So in the upper left-hand corner, you see the borrow pit. The construction access for this development, instead of coming all the way down the roadway, we agreed to kind of go between those two lakes with the construction traffic. That was a concern of some folks with, you know, trucks coming and going to build the infrastructure. So this is the current plan. We also had a discussion about lot sizes, and this plan also now has 50-foot wide lots running along the existing main road, and across the street we kept the 40-foot lots, and that was to have bigger lots next to the main existing road. So again, here's the current plan. You'll see a couple of parking areas for some overflow additional parking. Also, one of those would have the mailboxes. And this is a rendering. You can see kind of at the bottom next to International Golf Drive, there's existing trees to remain. So it's a minimum of 25 feet of existing vegetation and kind of a maximum at the left entrance, more like about 50 or 60 feet. In addition to that, you can kind of pick up the street trees that are actually in the right-of-way, the oak trees. So as a result of that meeting, there was a discussion about how can we make sure that the tree canopy is thick enough. So in the current PD plans that we'll get to next, we ended up adding a continuous hedge along the backs of all the lots, plus oak trees and magnolia trees as close as a landscape architect can physically place them. And that would augment on the lots the existing tree buffer to remain. So Rob had mentioned earlier about the comp plan, and that's really what we're talking about now. We're going to get into the PD rezoning after this, but I was asked under the current comp plan to look at apartment complex, and you know, we've designed quite a few of those on an LPGA. So this is just an exhibit that would be a potential if we use that retail area and the commercial area and did the 40 unit per acre maximum. So this is more just what could be, not what we're going to do, but what possibly could be. So I was asked to, well, if we did go with the current comp plan, how many apartments could we get in there? And it was quite a few. So these are some bullet points that maybe we'll come back to, but you know, we reduced the density, we dropped townhomes, we eliminated townhomes, we eliminated the public park, eliminated the roadway connection, modified the practice hall, construction access, and then Rob will talk more about this on the PD. But there was a lot of comment about traffic's terrible. You know, they didn't have the light at the time we started this nearby. So the developer agreed to wait 2.5 years after we get zoning approval at commission before their first CO. And the intent on that was to let the widening and the new bridge, you know, all that Smoka River to occur. And I figured I'd get some of that. But anyway, I do a lot of projects, and I don't see many of them that have a delay to get started associated with them. So that was, in our opinion, something that was given up. And Rob, I think this was kind of your slide. I don't know if you want to hold off on talking about this. Let me sit down.
Parker, before you run off, I just wanted to ask a couple of quick questions of you that to make sure I understand and make sure my fellow board members do as well. We're talking about, in this case, we're talking no apartments, we're talking no townhomes. The only effect is going to be on the practice homes 1 and 2, and we're talking from the time this is worked out, a 2.5-year delay. Did I
Yes, from the
understand that
time the
correctly?
zoning is approved, 2.5 years before the first residential CO. So during that period of time, they could build the infrastructure, they could start some model homes, but they couldn't get a CO for 2.5 years.
I just want to make sure that was clear. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, let me just add, Rob Cheryl for the record again. So
Please, Rob.
the things that you're talking about now, really, I did allow Parker to blend some of the plan in with this. And the only reason why it made sense was I really wanted you to see the timeline, what we've been going through, if you will. But while you're up here, Parker, I think the most relevant thing at the moment, just in the context of the comp plan change, is found in Doug's staff report, which he gave you earlier. I don't know how much, Doug, you drilled into the net change as it relates to Parker's world, which is water impacts, sewer impacts, the other infrastructure impacts, when you look at what's allowed now versus what we're asking for. And so if you wouldn't mind just address, you don't need to get the numbers out, but.
Well, we have, we're asking for 120 single family, and the comp plan allows that 620 units, so you don't have to be an engineer. It's like 5 times as much. So there's going to be, 1/5 the number of toilets, 1/5 the number of sinks. So the demand on water and sewer infrastructure, just based on the comp plan, is reduced significantly. And I want to remind you, we do have some traffic slides.
Matt's coming up next, but stormwater, same thing, drainage, all those, when you start adding more, it means more of that. So again, that's his world, and it's definitely going to last. So back to the punchline, Matt's going to talk to you a little about traffic, and then I'm going to finish.
Sounds great, Rob. Thanks. Evening, Matt.
Good evening. I'm Matthew West with LTG Incorporated at 1450 West Granada Boulevard. I'm a transportation planner. I'm not an engineer, just to be clear on that. We're going to talk, I guess I got to use this, don't I?
It's the right one.
Okay. We're going to talk again about what has already been discussed or touched upon is the theoretical trip generation on this property based on the comprehensive plan. And a lot of the discussion was about 620 dwelling units versus 120 dwelling units. But this property has 2 other land uses on it, that office transition and retail commercial, that allow a tremendous amount of commercial square footage and office square footage. What the comp plan currently allows on the office transition and the retail parcel of this property is what's called a floor area ratio of 3.0. And what that means is for every acre of land you have, you get 3 acres of building area. And that really means multi-story buildings. So when you look at that and you look at what those 2 land uses allow, it allows up to theoretically 1.8 million square feet of medical office and 213,000 square feet of shopping center. And what that equates to on the bottom of the slide, based on the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, which is a nationally respected source for trip generation research, that allows up to a little over 85,000 daily trips, just those 2 uses. And in the PM peak hour, which is everybody's rush hour coming home from work, and the highest trip generating hour, that's over 8,000 PM peak hour trips, based on the land use that you have there now that will be removed in favor of the level 1 residential. This is now, we just went through the 85,000 and 8,100 for those 2 land uses. If we compare that to the 120 single family dwelling units, you're going from 85,000 trips down to about 1,200 trips daily. And you're going from about 8,000 PM peak hour trips down to 118 PM peak hour trips.
And Matt, let me just jump in. And the catalyst for this change, it would be the move to level 1 residential.
Correct.
From what we have currently.
Correct.
That is what's creating this marked difference.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, with that text change capping the units at 120.
Thank you.
So this is, I just repeated myself here on this slide. This shows the potential decrease of trips based on this request to amend the comprehensive plan. So we're talking in the thousands. Briefly, there is golf course property here. It's not a big generator. You can see golf court, the 20 acres or almost 21 acres of golf course would have generated around 78 daily trips and 6 p.m. peak hour trips. That's really just a minor amount of traffic that would also be removed in exchange for the 120 units per acre. So let's talk about these 120 single-family homes and traffic issues. What this development would be required to pay for 120 single-family homes is there's a county road impact fee and there's a city road impact fee. The county's is much greater because they have a much more extensive thoroughfare roadway network. They have collectors and arterials. The city has their fee that you can see there. And based on the current fees now, those 120 single-family units would pay about $700,000 in road impact fees. And that's assuming the average house was 2,000 square feet. And the city and the county have kind of a sliding scale based on the size of the house. The fee goes up or down based on the size of the house. The other thing we have to do, and this is further down the road, this is past comp plan amendments, this is past zoning. This goes to the actual on the ground detailed traffic impact study that this 120 units would impose on the local roadway network. Our firm or other traffic engineering firms would negotiate a methodology with the city and the county to determine how to conduct that study to determine a more more realistic based study than the impact. The impact fees are kind of based on broad levels of service standards, and it's kind of generalized fee information. This is kind of ground truthing. This particular development's actual impacts on the roadways, and we calculate what the mitigation would be required to support the traffic from this development, and what we end up coming up with is what's called a proportionate share amount, which is this development's share of its impacts on the county and the city roadways. And if the impact fees are higher, then the developer pays the impact fees. If the proportionate share amount is higher, remember the impact fee was $700,000. Let's say the proportionate share came out to $1 million. They paid the higher of the two fees, which could be $1 million or whatever. We haven't done that study yet. That's off in the future, past zoning and past future land use. The developer can mitigate it by paying those fees, one of those fees, or building infrastructure that's the equivalent amount, dollar amount or cost amount. So for example, Buc-ee's, when they came in, they 6-lane the bridge of LPGA over the interstate and put in a lot of turn lanes and lengthened a lot of turn lanes to mitigate their impacts. Minto, the Margaritaville, they built a portion of Timber Creek Road, which is part of the county's thoroughfare roadway network. They're trying to build that road and extend it up to State Road 40. Also, Tomoka Town Center had, I think, about $2 million in proportionate share costs. Now, some of that they invested in putting in some road improvements to mitigate the impact, but as I recall, they paid about $2 million to mitigate their traffic impacts. And one of the things we look forward to in negotiating with the city and the county is what's called pipelining. You take that money and you put it to a particular project that the city or the county wants to prioritize. Rather than spread it out over 5 projects, you pipeline it to a specific project. And I know that the county's collected money from all the various developments in that area, and so there is money there, but a lot of things are not fully funded yet. Now I want to talk briefly about the two major road improvements in this area that everybody's very concerned about. One is the widening of LPGA Boulevard from US 92 to Williamson. That includes the Tomoka River Bridge, and it also includes the interchange at I-95 and LPGA. It is in design phase right now. Florida Department of Transportation is designing the 4-laning of that roadway and the interchange and the bridge over the Tomoka River. They'll have their 60% plans done around April. Kathy Enoch from FDOT is the project manager, and I spoke to her a couple of days ago. And their hope is they'll have the 60% design plans done in April. They're also actively seeking right-of-way, acquiring right-of-way and acquiring land to develop stormwater ponds. So they're in the right-of-way acquisition phase, or then they're in the design phase. Now, the whole project as a whole is like over $300 million. It's not fully funded, but there's progress being made getting to that point where that widening can and will occur. The other project in the vicinity is Dunn Avenue, which is a Volusia County roadway. And the idea is to connect the Dunn Avenue portion of that's near Tomoka Farms Road to the area on LPGA near the municipal football stadium. They have a right of way for that. They're also acquiring a few other pieces of property, but the right of way is there, and the county is in design for the two-laning of that extension to connect Tomoka Farms Road to LPGA. Once again, they don't have money budgeted or set aside to widen it yet, but the design is taking place. As a matter of fact, there's a developer building about 3,500 feet of it. I think it's integrated LPGA. Is that? It's not.
Yeah, the name escapes me. It's right over by the stadium. It's a development that's occurring behind the
So
stadium.
they're already they're committed to build a portion of it, but the county's designing the roadway and actually talking about doing it in the 2 phases, possibly, doing half, here now and a half later. So I just want to point these things out that there is progress being made. So, who knows where we'll be in 2.5 years with the other road improvements and these road improvements that I just highlighted for you. And I'm available if you have any questions.
Any questions for Matt?
I have one.
Please.
I've been sitting here listening, and, you're talking about the county and DOT. Have they officially made the swap from county to DOT on the road?
I don't think there's going to be a swap.
Well, originally the road was a county road. And with all of the development there, the DOT says, and the reason I ask this is they were going to swap Peninsula, which is a state road, and the county was going to take over Peninsula and give the state LPGA. Now, if I'm wrong on that, I would like to find out, because I live on Peninsula.
I heard the same thing, but I don't know the status of that. So
Because how would that impact, if they don't? Because DOT, the reason this came up is on account of the bridge. The county said that they couldn't afford to 4-lane it, or, would be way off in the future. It's like the road widened itself all the way down to 92. They couldn't afford for the right-of-way, and so the state said that they would do it. So you're paying impact fees to the county when possibly the state might own that.
Well, I do know this, that the county road impact fee allows credits for improvements on state roads. They're included in part of the fee, but I'm not aware of the status of the swapping arrangement on that you're describing.
So no
Rob,
swapping.
You're
yet.
up.
So
time for Rob, yeah.
I let Matthew drive down the road, if you will, a ways to talk about some of the traffic aspects of this, really beyond item 4A. And I did that because I felt like folks in the audience have been asking about traffic. They live in LPGA. They know that there's a lot of congestion out there right now, and everybody wants to know. So that was sort of a little bit of an extra about information that I thought they might need to hear before they decided to come up and talk about those things. Back to 4A, and Matt, you can sit down.
Thank you, Matt.
So back to 4A to close this, and from my standpoint. Traffic impact, water impact, sewer impact, drainage, stormwater impacts, all of those impacts, without question, not just Matt, not just Parker, the county traffic engineer, the city traffic engineer, the city civil engineer, all of the folks in the city and the county have said unanimously that what Rob Merrill said, that this is mathematical, it's not an opinion, is fact. Going from the allowed future land use to the proposed future land use is, in fact, a reduction in all of those impacts. Are they theoretical impacts? Absolutely. That's what a comprehensive plan is about. It's a theoretical look at what's allowed in the big picture. Now, the next item is talking about a small picture, and we can go into the pre and post, if you will, on that. But I can tell you this. Your decision tonight is not, because some people might get up and say, why don't we put the comprehensive plan designation of open space or nothing or golf or something else on it. What's before you tonight is none of that. It's what's there now. You can say, no, we don't want you to change the map amendment or the text amendment. Leave it the way it is. Then you'll have what's been described to you by Doug and by Parker and by Matt, or the reduction by the amounts that we've talked about now, probably too much. Those are your two choices. And if you say no, you don't want to make the change, that's fine, we're back where we were. And then we're going to figure out what to do with those office transition and retail uses and come up with something, a plan that might work. Now, Parker showed you one, and some people might say, oh, that was threatening, I heard people grumbling about it. We're just trying to figure out what to do with this piece of land, because we have certain, what we call in the lawyer world, investment-backed expectations. When somebody bought this land, they knew about that red on the map. They knew about that white on the map. And they knew about the zoning being single family on top of that. So what we're asking for here is something less than that. And I hope you guys be okay with it.
Probably you go off, let me just ask a question. You've been through enough of these discussions, and I guess my question would be, in your opinion, and I realize it's somewhat conjecture, why, in your opinion, has the property not been developed with the current land use designation that we've had today?
Mike, I couldn't tell you that. I just don't know the answer. I know what these folks want to do, and I think it's a responsible approach to doing it, but that's just an opinion. Again, what I've been saying up to that moment is all factual and, like I said, mathematical.
Any other questions for Rob? Please, Mr. Robinson.
Always.
It's more, to clarify in my mind what's going on. I read the thing, and it's a lot of reading to do. Now, currently, the future land use as golf, office transition, and retail. You're saying that there will be no apartments and no townhomes. What about the retail?
So I mixed you up a little bit, Milverton. When we talked about what we want, that was the answer. We want 120 homes, that's it. So what we want is just that. We don't want any retail. We don't want any medical office, as Matt talked about. We don't want any apartments. We want 120 single-family homes. That's it.
Okay. And
we limited ourselves in the comp plan, not the zoning. In the comp plan, we limited ourselves by that text policy.
Now, I'm confused a little bit because you talked about level 1 residential. And it's not designated as a level 1 residential now?
No, it's designated as golf, office transition, and retail. There are three. That's why this is kind of mixed up, and I wanted to do this separately, because it's not what we're used to. So it has single-family zoning on the entire piece right now. It has golf, office transition, and retail comprehensive plan future land use designations on all three of those pieces.
But not
separately.
You talk about single family homes and residential. Are they separate? Are they?
So there's an inconsistency among those zonings with the future land use. You follow what I'm saying? So they don't always line up. And that's part of why we're here. They don't line up. But when you're talking only comprehensive planning, which is what we're doing on 4A, Get to 4B, it's a whole different discussion.
Yeah,
I mentioned the zoning just so you understand as a backdrop, it does have single-family zoning on this entire piece that we're talking about right now. So we're going from SFR 5, you'll see in the next item, I'm just foreshadowing now, SFR 5 to PD, which will be limited by the comp plan to 120 units.
but if you have single family as a designation, what's the difference between the single family designation and your level 1 residential?
One's a zoning and one's a land use. That's the difference.
So the SR, the single family is
SRF 5 is a zoning category, which is on this entire property, which you'll see in the next item.
right.
That's item 4B.
And level 1 residential is the desired land use that we're asking for, with the text policy further limiting it to 120.
Yeah, and
So it normally be 2 something, Doug said, and we're limiting it to like half of that.
I think that's part of my confusion. And maybe Dennis, you
I
can
was just going to say, if you take a look at page 19 of your staff report, that is really what we're talking about with this application. You'll see a map that shows what the current land uses are for the property that's been identified in red. You see that on the left-hand side, it's the office transition, the retail, and the golf. And then you see on the right-hand side where it says level 1 residential, that's what this request would do. It would change the land use from what you see on the left to what you see on the right. And that level 1 residential land use, with the policy that Rob is also going to be including into the comp plan, would limit the development to 120 residential units.
Anything else, Mr. Robinson?
I'm still confused.
I have.
Because you're talking about homes, single family, right? And for me, that's residential. That's where people live.
So
People gonna
Milverton,
reside in.
Milverton,
So you're telling me now there's a single family designation on the property?
now, there's a mixture of 3 land use designations.
But not single family?
Not single family. So on the comprehensive plan, when you say designation, I think you mean future land use designation, right? So the future land use designations are office transition, retail, and golf. Those are the only 3. There's no single family designation on the property. That's what we're asking for.
Oh, you want, okay, I got you now. So
That's what we're asking for.
that's not there now.
But not to complicate things, but there is single family zoning on top of the whole thing.
Which isn't comp plan.
Which is not comp plan, it's zoning.
It's a difference between
That's
the
4B.
future land use and the current zoning. They're different, and what Mr. Merrill is trying to indicate is that they're inconsistent as they stand now.
Apples
Trying to
and
make them
oranges.
consistent,
Apples and
essentially,
oranges.
Milverton. What it will do is make it consistent and lessen the impact dramatically.
But you're still gonna build homes.
We are.
Because the overall
Well, so that's
thing-
going to be item 4B.
Yeah.
We'll get up and talk about the plan with 4B, and we
Yeah.
can talk about houses and architecture and buffering and everything else.
That's,
And
yeah, I'm not talking about all that.
Right.
I'm talking about, you're talking about on the entire thing, single family can be,
that's it.
you can build single families,
120 units.
right? But you're saying now you want to change it to residential? And
Yes.
but single family is residential, isn't it?
It is. So I mixed you up by talking about the zoning, because that's the SFR 5 is the zoning.
2 separate things.
2 separate things. Level 1 residential is the land use classification, the designation you were talking about earlier. That's what we're asking.
So you're saying that if we to change this to level 1 residential, it would be consistent with the single family
Now you got it.
Zoning.
That's it.
zoning.
That's exactly right. Bingo.
Could you not have built with the zoning on there?
So there.
In theory, they could build with the current zoning.
That's my confusion, because if
But
it's
the
already,
issue is that they could also be entitled to a rezoning as it currently stands to be consistent with the current future land use designation, which would allow them to do the more intensive development that they're talking about.
Right. So we would have to, if we wanted to put a convenience store at the corner, we'd have to come in and show you a plan for it, or ask for a zoning classification for that. Because right now it says single family. it's inconsistent, and we have every right to do the more intense one, because I'm going to confuse things, I know. But in the legal world, now comp plan world, zoning world, the legal world, between comprehensive plan designations and zoning, comprehensive plan weighs out between the two legally. So doesn't matter what your zoning says if this says something different. 100%. So let's not do the question and answer thing yet. But I'll say what I said again, which is under the state statute. Go ahead, our city attorney will help you. The comprehensive plan trumps the zoning, if you will.
They could seek a rezoning based upon the current future land use designation, and they'd be entitled to that if that's what they wanted to do.
Right.
And under the current future land use designation, they are entitled to more intensive development. What they're proposing, and the only thing that this first item deals with, is the current land use designation, the future land use designation. So the only thing that your decision on this item would affect is what that future land use designation is. And what they're proposing is that they would further limit what they would be permitted to develop under that designation. It's a separate decision as it relates to the PD, so the specific project that they're looking to do here would be relevant to the PD discussion, which is the next item, so.
Close.
Close. We're getting there. Great.
Mike, let me shut my part down by saying I know there's going to be folks talking, and I'm perfectly fine with them talking about whatever they want to talk about, plans and whatever you want to get into. But ultimately, at the end of this discussion, I want to be able to get back up and answer any questions that they have that I might be able to answer, as well as hopefully get us back to the point of what we're really voting on here tonight.
Not a problem, Rob. Any other questions for Rob before he steps off? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, moving forward we have a number of green forms for speakers. I'd ask you to remind you that limit is 3 minutes per speaker. Please give your name and address as you're coming up, and please remember my ditto idea that if the persons before you have made the points that you want to make, believe me, we will take in consideration the fact that you're up there, name, address, and yes, those are the points I wanted to make. If that's appropriate for you, in the interest of time for everyone here, we'd like to be honest with your time. So with that, if I could ask Amy Cox to please come up. Again, name, address, and 3 minutes, and thank you for being here tonight.
Hello, my name's Amy Knox, and my address is 220 Centennial Park Drive. I guess I have a couple of questions, more or less. One being with the comprehensive plan, listening in tonight, it sounds like to me that the developer is suggesting changes to the comprehensive plan, and I would think that the Planning Commission would want to have some say in, you would have thoughts and ideas in what you would like to see happening in your community. At least I would hope that you do, and not be influenced solely by somebody from Cobb Cole that comes in and talks to you all the time, because you clearly know them on a first name basis. As that was brought up tonight, there are theoretical trip generations that were brought up. They were hypothetical. A lot of hypothetical was brought up. I think this needs to be talked about. There were development numbers brought up, 620, 640, 690, talked out down to the 120, the 5, that's a difference of 570. It's talking about what's in the comprehensive plan, that's future development, versus what about the existing development as to what's there now. That entire parcel today is a golf course. That's a golf course property. When Charlie purchased that property, probably 4 or 5 years ago, he purchased 39 golf holes. And he intended and promised us that he was going to continue that property forward and was going to do improvements. I don't see how that is being carried forward. Just something that I would like to bring forward. One other thing is with I know we brought it up, but infrastructure in the area. When we were leaving the development tonight at Champions Drive, there were almost 5 car accidents. It's something that needs to be taken into consideration. There's constant traffic jams out there already. It says there's going to be less trips out there. That's theoretically, if there would be less trips, yes, if it's not medical office buildings, etc. But when it's golf course now, there's not many trips generated. Most of those people are already at the golf course. I'll let someone else speak.
All right, then, thank you, Amy. And Amy, so you know, we try to be professionally informal here at our planning board. Appreciate it very much. Next we have is Karen Knox, and if I could ask Susan Moxley to kind of get in queue, please, afterwards, if you would, please. Karen?
Hello, my name is Karen Knox, and I live at 220 Centennial Park Drive. Amy happens to be my daughter. So, when you talk about this comprehensive plan, I wondered what year that comprehensive plan was written. And if sometimes the thoughts about what you want in your comprehensive plan change, but do they always have to change to the developer's decision, or should it be what is good for the community? If we move to the housing, land use is now whatever it was called for. He talked about hospital, clinics, and all that retail. But perhaps that was a mistake in the plan when it was originally written. The whole area has changed substantially. Maybe there should be some thought given to preserving part of our community the way we would like to see our community be preserved, rather than thinking that we now have to build more homes. There are so many homes going up out there right now. And when you talk about the use of the sewer and the water, again, it was all theoretical. We do not know what's going to happen with the thousands of homes that are being built out there right now. What is the real effect going to be? I believe, from a golfer's perspective, because I golf out there, that it has changed our golf course already. It has created a very wet golf course out on the one that's called the Hills course right now. And I believe part of that is the whole drainage issues, and it's all part of the flooding issues, more roofs, more runoff, more roads, more runoff, and that has not all been resolved. And I think that is part of the issue. And I also want to say, I was driving the car as we were leaving this evening, and there were really about 3, 4, or 5 accidents on the corner at one time. And it took us not 22 minutes like Google says, but about 35 to get down here. So that is part of the whole issue as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Next, there's Susan. Hi.
Good evening.
Good
Thank you so
evening.
much for allowing us the opportunity to speak.
Of course.
My name is Susan Moxley, 3244 Legends Preserve Drive, Daytona Beach. I agree with all the comments that have been said so far, and I appreciate the history lesson, but it seems to me like if we've been down this road numerous years and numerous times, and I don't remember the statistic that was stated by your staff member, how many times this has appeared, it would seem to me that we'd get the message that we don't want anything built on that property. We want the natural habitat of a golfing community. That's what I'd like to just instill as my opinion in my comments tonight. When we were selecting a golf course community to purchase a home, there were many in this area that we could have selected, but we chose specifically LPGA. We had golf there, we've been there, so we do allow the public to come into our community, unlike it was implied earlier in one of the presentations and comments. And if you drive in, now I live not at the Champions Gate closest to 95. I live on the one that's furthest out across from Bayberry. And when you go in that, where the LPGA office is, what a beautiful, beautiful community you're driving into. The canopy of trees, the green space, and it's golfing green space. And I recognize how they talked about the comprehensive plan. And when that map was up there, And I felt a little pressured, like if you don't agree with this, then we'll just build those apartment buildings, which would be horrible. But yet, when I looked at the map up there, I saw that when you look at the acreage, over 20.98 acres are zoned or comprehensive plan for golf, which is what it is. And then it went down 13 for the office transition and 1.36 for the retail. But when you look at that and you look at that on that map, we're still preserving the natural habitat. If any of you happen to drive out there where we live after Milton came through, it was like driving in the middle of parted seas because the water was flowing on both sides. You couldn't even get to I-4. I mean, that's a common thing. But when you drive into our development where the golf course is, you can see that's raised up. That was all wet in there up into the road. On the other side of the road, it was wet in there and it's just pouring into the sewer system. The sewer system can handle it, yes. And my comment is just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because it ticks all the boxes and we've done our due diligence and we know what the comprehensive plan has in theory and textbook, that is not reality before you tonight. We live there, we see it. And it's going to have flooding problems. And I'll speak to the other issue on zoning. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Next is Mr. Killian. Kevin Killian. How are you, Kev?
Good. Kevin Killian, 1218 Champions Drive, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board. I will say that I was a part of those meetings, and by far this is the least offensive. But I've been on the other side of this, and I know how it works. You ask for the world, and then you say, oh, look, I only want half the world. So property owners have rights. I agree to that. But the property owner doesn't want to build houses. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ralph. You represent the developer, right? Not the property owner. So the
Please
property.
direct your comment to
Yes,
Kevin.
forgive me. So the property owner doesn't want to build houses. The property owner wants to sell it to somebody who wants to build houses, and that's who Rob represents. Now, if he can't get this zoning, the gentleman who Rob represents is not going to buy the property because that's the way it works. They have to get it rezoned, and then the person who builds houses will build houses. And if you're going to start, bulldozing under golf courses, what's next? Memorial Stadium, Champions Elementary. I mean, what's next? When is enough enough? I keep hearing from this board and from the city commission, all this zoning was started 20 years ago. We really can't help the traffic, but not this one, guys. This one's on you and the commission. I would encourage you to listen to your residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Next is John Nicholson. John?
John Nicholson, 413 North Granview Avenue. Almost 40 years ago, I stood in this exact spot when we were talking about a possibility of having the LPGA, Women's Professional Golf Association, come into town. And there was a developer that wanted to develop out west. All right? I'm used to Miami where you build everything at once. And the developer said, no, we're going to build this, and then we're going to add this, and then we're going to add that. And I've been here many times when somebody has come in and said, I own this land in LPGA, and I think it was called Greyhawk, like 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. There's adding this location, they're adding that location. And I was out there like a year ago, and I went to the country club, and there's a new development right next door, all right? They'd taken all the trees out, and there was another development. This has always been planned to have houses here, 40 years, all right? Why are we upset that they're going to put houses where houses are going, all right? It's because 40 years ago, they said, well, we don't know what's going to go there. It could be as much as apartments. It could be office buildings. It could be retail. We don't know. So we want this zoning. Now they come in and say, well, we don't want that. Somebody wants to build houses. So we need to rezone it to allow just these 120 houses. They've been doing this for several years now. It's about time to say, okay, they have a choice, apartments, houses. But something's going to go there. The man has a right to put something there, and we've known that for 40 years. He has a right to put something there. I personally like the idea of houses versus apartments. We have more than enough apartments going around LPGA, Williamson, etc. So if you look at it in the long range, over 40 years, the rest of us knew this was coming. When you buy out there, you like the trees. But you have to understand, when you buy out there, those trees are zoned for houses, just like in Margaritaville. They're complaining about the development. Well, we like the trees. Well, guess what? There were trees before you got there, and they went, and now these people have a right to homes, and this man has a right to develop his property. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next, we have Scott Hollingsworth, please. Remember, name and address for the record, and 3 minutes, please, Scott.
Hi, Scott Hollingsworth, 1124 Champions Drive. Thank you for seeing everybody tonight. A lot of things the gentleman just said, I'm going to say ditto on, because there's no way we can stop some of the things that are going to happen, but we need to slow it down. What Ms. Knox said about the wet conditions on the Hills course are absolutely a fact. The average pine tree sucks up about 1,000 gallons of water a month, and they've cleared off, I don't know how many acres, probably 100 acres of pine trees, and it's causing the whole area to be very wet all the time. So that's a problem. Also, wildlife in the area has been greatly impacted. We used to see bobcats and deer all the time. Don't ever see them anymore. And that's really a bad thing. And traffic, Tuesday afternoon, 2 o'clock, I'm heading to work and I can't get to 95. It took 20 minutes after getting out to LPGA to go the less than a mile to get to 95. It's only going to get worse. We've got to slow down things and let the work on the bridge and other infrastructure catch up. And that's what I'm asking for, is to slow things down. Ormond, here, paper I got picked up in your lobby just a minute ago. Ormond says no to new houses. Why? Because they've realized they need to slow things down. It's not that development shouldn't happen. It's not that growth isn't going to happen. I'm for growth. I'm for the development. This looks like a pretty good compromise for the best case scenario, as opposed to apartments or office buildings and things. But right now, LPGA cannot handle the traffic of 4,000 houses at Margaritaville, the 2,000 at Mosaic, the almost 1,000 houses they're putting out at the LPGA and the associated communities there. It can't handle the traffic. And until that's addressed, we need to slow down. That's what I got to say about it.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Scott. Next, we have Cameron Woolery. Woolley, oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me tonight and for listening to comments. My name's Cameron Woolley. I live at 128 Lynx Terrace Boulevard in the LPGA community. And there's just a couple things that are concerning to me that I'm hearing tonight. First of all, we hear this hypothetical 620 homes if they use that the retail zoning and the hypothetical office space zoning, which is a scary number. It's zoned for that. It could be used for that. However, we're lumping the golf course in with that. Now, this is something that we've seen. We came over, actually, my whole family moved from Lake Nona. Myself, my grandmother, and my dad, actually, we moved because my sister is a junior golfer, and she is currently the ladies club champion over at the LPGA course. She's very, very exceptional, and we love the golf.
Congrats.
Thank you. But however, with that 620, we've seen it in Lake Nona, where these companies, they build these golf communities and they sell golf course homes, and then slowly but surely you chip away at the zoning around the golf. Now, we have these 620 homes that could be zoned for that apartments, retail area, but how many homes can be built on the land that is zoned for golf? And why is this being framed as being in our favor when we're lumping in these retail spaces with this golf rezoning? And how many times are we going to allow rezoning of these spaces, lumping in golf course land until we chip away, using it as a scary alternative for us? And I have other concerns, and I'll speak on that in the other area. But as far as the rezoning goes, we're using this hypothetical apartment, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm kind of new to city planning. Is it correct that if they decided to build those apartments in that area zone for retail, wouldn't we have to go through a whole hearing like this again? Not necessarily about zoning, but still about the building? So just by deciding not to change this zoning to make it easier for them to build those single-family homes, we are not inherently allowing for the building of these apartments. They're going to have to be heard about them again. So yes, in general, it's using this big scary thing. I believe the quote was, "I hope you guys are getting this." So that was a very helpful thing to say. But yes, it's not just simple math. It's a way to chip away at one thing by making us think we're getting the thing we want. And that's all I have to say on that particular matter. Thank you so much for hearing me.
Thank you, Karen. Well, folks, that's all the green forms we have for item. May have some that for 4B, sir. Are you? If you'd like to speak, we'd have to have you fill out a green form if you would. Do you? Okay. So I'm sorry, I might have missed it.
My name is Greg.
Greg Griffin. Okay, Greg.
I originally wrote A and B, and then you told me to fill 2 forms out, so I just.
Okay. Okay. Greg, come on up, please. We want to be sure everyone, this is 4A.
4A.
And we want anyone who's here would like to speak to do so. Name and address for the record. 3 minutes, sir, please.
Thank you. Greg Rubin, 7 Lions Paw, 7 Nobles. I believe I'm the oldest member of LPGA. We've been here 28 years. And there's two salient issues here. Issue number 1, this was designed to take Daytona Beach forward, have a world-class facility, which it was. It still is, but it's been going down, to lure the LPGA, who's still here, but may not be here forever. And why do we take some nice green space we have and change it? But item B, and thank you, Mr. Robertson, for helping clarify it, because at this moment, we cannot build residences in this place. And so the vast majority of the acreage is for golf. And I spent my life leading one of the world's largest retail consulting firms. And I can tell you, there's a reason why, I think, Michael, you brought this up earlier. Why isn't anybody building offices there or retail there? Well, nobody in their right mind would want to put an office or a retail there, and never will go in there. So what we're talking about is changing a space that's green, that has golf, and is part of a really wonderful facility, and putting in 120 houses. And let's face it, we have thousands of houses all around LPGA that have been built. Mine was one of the originals. And why would we want to change that? I know Daytona wants to grow. I know you want more tax dollars. Everybody, it makes sense. But this is not a place where you need it. And to change that zoning and that land use doesn't permit it right now. And if you look at where, and you're not going to, they're talking about 620 units. I don't know how many retailers you're planning on putting in there, but I don't know any retailer that's going to put in anything less than 1,000 or 2,000 square feet. And, you're not going to put them all in there. It's not going to happen. And nor office is going to go in there. And so it's not only theoretical, but it's virtually impossible. And what you're taking is green space, we have far less of than we used to, and changing it. And I think it's a big mistake for both the LPGA community and for the golf course. If I own that golf course, someday I might want to sell that golf course. And selling it the way it is now will be much more attractive than selling it with a bunch of houses in the middle of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're trying to organize between items 4A and B. Next I have here for item 4A is Jacob Barr. Jacob, please. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Jacob Barr. I live at 218 Lytham Way in LPGA in the Masters Glen subdivision, which is right across the street from where this is proposed to go. And every morning when I leave for work, I see a nice green area right now. Hope it stays that way. Briefly echo what some others have mentioned, that just because in the past something was thought to be a good idea doesn't mean in the present or in the future it's a good idea. I've lived here in the area since I was about 9 years old. I'm 55 now. I don't want to do the math, but it's been a long time. And I've lived in Holly Hill, I've lived in Ormond, lived in Daytona, LPGA since 2016. And over that period of time, like anyone else who's lived here for a long time, been a lot of progress, a lot of growth in the community, which there should be, just like human beings should grow and progress. I think over the past few years, the community growth and progress has been one on steroids. And just as a human trying to get bigger and progress on steroids, unless it was a medical issue that they needed to, it's not a good thing. And the problem, they say that it's 50%, 60% in the planning stages of the road, the bridge there at the auto mall. That is a major problem. And I know we're just talking about these potential 120 homes. That doesn't take into account all the other development that is proposed and going on out there. There's a 5-acre plot of land there on the corner of LPGA at our entrance that someone was proposing to put in 36 apartments. There's a church where the land's been cleared at Bayberry, where there's going to be a new church there with all that intermittent traffic coming on. Mosaic, Margaritaville, all the commercial property that's going on across from the Publix there at Latitudes. So you have all this traffic that's dumping in. I'm sure that wasn't part of the plan that they did for the traffic plan for just this. You have to take all of that into consideration. And 2 weeks ago, my wife was coming home from work. Our office is on Hand Avenue in Norman Beach. She got to the auto mall bridge and there was an accident. So nobody could go either way. She had to go down Tomoka Farms Road, go all the way down to International, come all the way back around and come in the back way of LPGA just to get home. So that took a little bit longer than it should. The last thing I'll say is when I was a youngster, I was about 5 or 6 years old. We were still living in Buffalo. Go Bills. There was a TV commercial that has always stayed with me. There was a man that came on and he looked at the camera and he said, land, they don't make it anymore.
That's right. I remember that one.
That's always stayed with me. And the funny thing is he went on to talk about come down to Florida and buy some swampland. The only thing I'm going to add to that is land. They don't make it anymore. Use it wisely. And if you think allowing this on that land is wise use of the land, that's on you.
Thank you. Looks like we have one left, unless someone's willing to correct me, which would be fine. Alan Cooper? Mr. Cooper, please come up, name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the planning board. My name is Alan Cooper. I live at 198 Sedona Circle in LPGA. When the Ladies Professional Golf Association was looking for a new headquarters in the late 1980s, the city of Daytona Beach made an effort to attract them to the city. They renamed 11th Street to LPGA Boulevard and offered to build a brand new course for LPGA on the undeveloped land west of 95. Consolidated Tomoka Land Company agreed to donate 650 acres of land to the city, and the result was LPGA International. LPGA was designed by Arthur Hill and Reese Jones, each designing their own course, with Reese developing the practice course. The practice course was developed because of LPGA's requirements for hosting the Sumatra Tour. The Sumatra Tour is the qualifying route for young girls to join the LPGA Tour. By developing the practice course with residential properties as proposed, this takes away all the incentive for LPGA to continue to stay in Daytona Beach. Daytona Beach LPGA is a destination for fans across the world. Losing LPGA would have an impact on tourism in the area. It would also impact the values of the community. The decision by 4Golf to rezone and develop has the majority in the community very upset. I respectfully request that the planning board not rezone from golf to residential housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron. Hello there. Would you like to speak to this item? Oh, I'm sorry. We have so many that put A and B and A or B. What is your name, ma'am? Crystal. Okay.
Why don't you go ahead and speak, and then you can we'll make sure you have a form filled out. If not, we'll just have you fill out another form.
Crystal, I think I found you. My apologies.
Oh, okay.
Please, your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Crystal Cross, and I'm at 1189 Champions Drive. I received this letter, I guess because I'm 300 feet from where everything's building. So I don't know much about math. I'm a social worker. I've been here for the last 15 years to help people. I can tell you that from my experience with my road on Champions Drive, we've experienced flooding already. I know that my house has experienced flooding already. I know that I've had to pay $5,000 out of my own pocket, not claiming insurance, not getting any grants from Daytona, just because the water keeps coming because we keep building. And nobody's saying, oh, well, we're just giving you this money to fix your home, because I've had it fixed and then it flooded again. And I know that my significant other had to go outside during the storm to try to get the water to go into the drain storms because it wasn't going. And he and the neighbor went out with rakes to try to fix that solution. But when it comes to math, I don't know. But when it comes to reality, I've had flooding already because of this build that's been going on. I've lived in my house for over 15 years. So let me get that straight, and only started to have trouble with the flooding in the last year or two. So this is just to let you know that this is more to come with more homes, because I've been a social worker for 15 years and work every day to make sure to have a home, not for it to be flooded due to all this new building that's going on. So I think we do need to have more information about how this is going to affect us, not hypothetically, but how it's already affecting us, because I can't keep paying $5,000 to try to fix a problem that no one can fix. And as for the roads and that mess and all that FDOT that they're talking about, and since we just don't know who's doing what with the roads, we can't count that we're going to get roads, and it takes 30 minutes to get out of my neighborhood. And it's dangerous because the way the light is now, we can't get out because we're at a standstill every time. So I think we just need to try to put this on hold until we have more information. That's all I'm saying. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kristen. Okay, folks, did I miss anybody for item 4A? It would appear not. Thank you. Rob, you wanted to have the last word? Jump on in, please.
Real quickly, Mr. Chairman, Rob Merrill, good for the record. A lot of good comments, questions were asked. I don't have a whole lot to add. I think that if most of the questions that I would try to answer have to do with item 4B. I know Parker and Matthew are still here to talk about, for instance, Crystal's comments about flooding. I know flooding is an issue for everybody. And Parker will have some things to say about that. And Matthew's still here to talk about the road network and concurrency and those sort of things. But all that's in compartment 4B. I still think everything that everybody said, nothing changes my thought about 4A, which is you either have the designation that's there now, which is a theoretical maximum. I agree. Somebody said hypothetical. I think that's the wrong term. It's theoretical. Maximum in the land use in the condition that's in now versus what we're asking for. Do you want it to be what you see on there right now, which Dennis, I think, and Doug have given you a pretty simple explanation about that, or would you have it be restricted like we're asking for? It lines up with what's there zoning wise now with the single family. So that's all we want. I think if you guys were to say no to this, you're saying no to what's already there, which is more. So it's that simple. Any questions for me?
Anything for Rob? Sir, you said you had a form up here. I could. Okay, what's your name, please?
Brady Lamsargas.
Brady Lamsargas. Yeah, let's see it. Apologize if you saw how many we had up here.
Why don't you come ahead and
please
speak, and then we'll make sure that we get you into the record.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for hearing me. Thank you for allowing us to speak. My name is Brady Sargis. I'm 205 Lytham Way, and I'll make it really brief.
All right.
I lived there for 8 years. My backyard is international golf. And the last couple years, I have seen the waters rise after big storms in international golf. In our streets, the golf course full of water. So much of what's being said true, and it's just getting worse. And the water on my faucet is less and less water coming out because there's so much demand on the water infrastructure because they're not doing anything to improve the infrastructure. Water, sewer, and drainage. These are things that they should pay for. It's the right thing to do. And that's all I'm saying is it needs to be done, and they need to take care of that. Thank you for hearing me very much.
Thank you, Brady.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else for 4A, please? All right, seeing none, let's talk about this a little bit. This is a difficult decision for me. I live in Latitude Margaritaville, and I have seen some of the things that you folks have talked about, where we've had the occasional traffic challenges, we've had flooding issues, we've had infrastructure challenges, and those things are ongoing, and we've been hopefully working on them the very best we can, realizing we could always do better. But folks, I see this as a classic case of be careful what you ask for, you might get it. Because it potentially, the way the land use is laid out now, we can have considerably greater impact than what we're talking about here. And in listening to all of you speaking, and thank you for taking the time to come out tonight, is I could talk to the applicant and say, let's squeeze this 120. Let's talk about ways we can make this 120 a lower number. But folks, I didn't hear one of you say, let's move it down. What I'm hearing from all of you saying, make it go away completely. And here's the challenge with that, is that, as you've heard, the property owner has rights too, and typically this is a negotiation where both sides work together to come to a place where everyone is relatively comfortable. That's usually what a good compromise is. What we have here is we have, starting from when these discussions happened 3 years ago, we have no apartments. We have no townhomes. The park that was originally put in was removed, and the applicant is saying, we'll wait till after rezoning for 2.5 years before we put the first shovel into the ground. It would appear, please, it would appear that is attempting to compromise. And that's what this process is, at least in my opinion that it is in the time that I've been here. So given those circumstances, I will be voting yes on the small scale amendment because I think it's the appropriate, we've gone about it in the appropriate way. We've made compromises along the way, and I'm not getting anything from the folks that were kind enough to speak tonight to say, if you give us just a little more, we'll be happy. What I'm hearing is the answer is none, never, no matter what the circumstance is. And the problem is, if it stays the way it is today, there's a possibility of a much greater impact than what we're talking about tonight. So that are my thoughts, and I'm certainly willing to have my fellow members speak to that as well. Pastor Barhu, please.
And I understand basically both sides of the story. I live out there also. I understand the flooding. I understand traffic issues. Getting out of there in the morning sometimes is very difficult. So I understand what you're feeling, what you're going through. However, as business owners, a landowner, or whatever, they do have rights. And I'd rather have something smaller rather than something greater in there. I do think it needs to be looked at, and probably at the next, maybe 4B, the impact of the water, the flooding issue that has to be taken care of. Definitely has to have a good plan. Traffic lights, making sure our citizens are safe going in and out, especially making a left-hand turn, going on LPGA, going towards 92. It's really, really difficult and dangerous, actually. And that whole corridor needs to be looked at. And we've been talking about this for the longest, the LPGA and the bridge and the whole shebang. And you know, sad to say, they're putting in a lot of houses. One of my other concerns was the size of the houses, because then it devalues some of the other houses that's actually in there. And so that would be one of my other concerns. The wildlife. Deers are running across the streets and being hit by cars laying at the side of the road. That's another impact. That's another area that I've seen personally and I am concerned about. But that's another number, 4B. But this particular thing, I'd rather see less houses, less homes, basically where we are, than having a greater impact and having more folks coming in and out into the community. And hopefully they are nicely designed. Well, I saw some of the designs. They would hopefully keep our value up, and hopefully that whole area would really look nice. It would be great to keep it the way it is, but as we see things change. So I too would be voting yes on this.
Thank you, Pastor. Mr. Weatherhouse, please.
You know, I've sat here and listened. I live about as far away as you can from you folks. I live, like I say, off the river, just before you go into the shores. All of us are aware, and especially me, young lady said something about Lake Nona. I can remember when Lake Nona was nothing but fields. I moved to Orlando 48 years ago. We have a flooding problem here. It's the weather. It's the building. You know, all of the developments. I should say I'm an engineer, and I'm also a general contractor, retired. And the more we build, the worse it's going to get, unless we do something about it. The road is atrocious out there. You know, I asked about the road, who owns it. I still haven't got an answer. You know, I'm not sure who it does, and it's the longer but what I do know about DOT, they said a few years ago they can do all the planning and everything they want, but until the state allocates the money, it's not going to be built. And it's not going to be built until, you know, it's going to be dead end sections after they acquire all of the right of way. The building, I agree with my colleagues. Less is better in this area right now. I'm talking about more apartments. I drive through there every day, driving around town. I will be voting for yes on this certain item, but I do understand what you're looking at. You'd like to see less development. I have a little quote or an experience. I lived on the ocean, and when I built my house down on the Keys, the neighbor across the street says, "Well, you're blocking my view." And you know what I told him? I says, "You know, to have that view without my house, you should have bought the lot." And that's the unfortunate part of this. You know, development, we can't change it, even though that we might experience a large growth here, and we definitely have here in Daytona. In just the last 10 years, we've gone up about 25% on our population, and there's no end in sight. So I understand. Being a golfer myself, I realize what you're saying, but the bottom line is the owner has the right to do what he does with his property. Thank you.
Please, folks, please. Thank you. Mr. Robinson, do you have any comments at this time?
Yes,
Oh, no, turn it back on. There you go.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. It really pains me to vote on this particular item. I've been in the Daytona Beach area since 1979. And I've seen where some of the roads were maybe 2-lane and did a green space. It pains me that we're losing a lot of green space and a lot of animals are getting impacted. And the future for our kids is a concrete jungle. And that's why we moved from the north down here, because we were promised an environmentally friendly home, space you can breathe fresh air. And I live in that area off of LPGA, and it's a struggle with the traffic. It's a struggle with the flooding. I've seen places flood that never flooded before since I've been here. Growth is going to happen. Change is going to take place. And somebody once told me that before you buy a house, you should look at the future land use designation for the next 20 years or 40 years before you buy in that property. And sometimes what they offer you is to get you to buy, because you're a lover of golf. And you say, oh, all right, I'm going to buy in this particular area. But the trend that we're seeing is a lot of these golf courses are being destroyed or taken away to build houses. And that's might be a trend that we don't have no choices. I looked at the landowner, and if it was your property, and I come in and says to you what you should or should not do with it, how would you feel? Regardless of what the zoning is or the HOA is, that's why I don't live in an HOA complex, because I don't want somebody telling me what I should do with my property. It does pain me to vote yes on this issue. And I look at the alternative. If we say no, he has the option to put in over 600 homes, retails and stuff like that. And when I look at the designation, right, that says single family, what does that mean and what can they do with it? Okay? So we're caught in a catch-22 or a back against the wall. If we say no, he could go back and says, okay, we're going to go with the designation now. We're going to bring in our office, apartments, townhomes, retail. And that would not be what we wanted. Now, the strategy is, okay, he said he's going to build less. He's going to put it in writing. So now we have to compromise, and we have to look at the next step in the process. When he comes in and says, okay, we want it to be zoned, this way, right? This is where we're gonna put our ideas as to how the zone in should be. When it gets to the commissioners, right, and we show up as voters, and you let them know what, as a community, you want, because the community does matter. But for the developer, the property owner, he's not looking at that. He's not looking at the impact of that, right? But you are. So what you should collectively do is to, talk to somebody and says, what are the steps and how can we influence each step? This right here, the developer has made a compromise and says, instead of making 600 homes, I'm going to make 120. Okay? And, then the developer says, there's a net decrease, which I still don't get it. In reality, okay? The reality is, right, the theoretically and reality, okay? And what the law says and what the code says that the developer can do with his property. And maybe what you should do, I'm almost finished, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Is to consult with your commissioner to change the land development code, right? Because what you're doing not only impacts you, but the entire Daytona Beach community. And we've had crowds like this before, when somebody wants to develop their property, even next to my house, okay? So, like I says, my choice is to vote yes on this, because voting no would be not in your best interest.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Ms. Washington, with my apologies, please.
Thank you. I've listened and I understand your plight. All the proper roads were traveled in order to get to this point. I really don't like the idea of voting yes, but because things are there, everything is in order. I don't agree with it, but it's in order, and I have no choice but to vote yes.
Thank you. Tony, any comments?
The only thing I would say is they're getting less, and that matters, from what they could get. So I will be voting yes on this.
You don't have a choice.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just one item I'll mention as well, ladies and gentlemen, is that there's been some discussion tonight about slowing down, eliminating moratorium, call it what you will. And I'll speak for myself, and there's probably plenty of others in this room that it would be applicable to, that if we had made moratorium decisions 5, 10, 20 years ago, there's a lot of people in this room that would not have the opportunity to live in this wonderful community that I think we all appreciate. So with that, I'd like to ask for a motion on item 4A, please.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve small-scale comprehensive plan amendment DV 2022-094 LPGA Golf Villas SSCPA.
I second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Before, I'd like to ask Madam.
Is this 4A or 4B?
This is 4A. 4A.
Okay.
I'd like to ask Madam Secretary if she would do a roll call vote, please.
Certainly. Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Servant?
Yes.
Mr. Weatherholtz?
Yes.
Ms. Washington, yes.
Vote passes unanimously.
I didn't vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Tony, I thought you did.
I apologize.
I thought you were the first one.
Mr. Barhoe?
Yes.
With that, the vote passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving forward to item 4B. Madam Secretary, please.
Sure. Item 4B, LPGA Villas, Planned Development, General PDG, DEV 2022-095, quasi judicial hearing.
Thank you very much. Can we hear from staff, please?
Thank you, Dennis Morozak, Planning Director with the city. First, I want to apologize for my voice. I may lose it every once in a while going through this, but I'll do my best to make it through. This item was originally staff report written by our senior planner, Danielle Pettick, who's not here, so I'll go ahead and do the presentation for her today.
Thank you, Dennis.
So this is a request by Rob Merrill with Cobb Cole on behalf of Jones Hill Golf LLC to rezone 36.5 acres of property from single-family residential 5, SFR 5, to Planned Development General, PDG, to allow for the development of 120 single-family detached dwelling units with associated infrastructure on a portion of the existing golf course property. And we've talked about this before, but this is where the property is located, generally northwest of the International Golf Drive and Champions Drive. The land use, as we just heard, currently is golf and office transition in addition to retail. And again, the request was to amend it to the level 1. The current zoning of the property is actually single-family residential 5, SFR 5. The applicant is seeking to amend the zoning to a planned development general zoning designation. So here's the overall aerial of the site, which you have already seen. The property currently consists of some undeveloped property and a portion of the driving range practice course for the LPGA golf facility. And you've heard a lot of these details. I'm just going to run through them real quick. In 2022, the PD application was submitted to the city. The original application was for 109 single-family detached dwellings and 54 townhomes, total of 163 units. Staff reviewed the PD plan. PD plan and made comments. Over that time, the PD was revised down to 144 single-family detached dwelling units. The applicant had met requirements for neighborhood meetings, had conducted several additional meetings with community stakeholders. Today, the revised plan, as you've heard, is for 120 single-family detached units on 36.5 acres. 42 of the units are 50-foot lots, 78 of the units being 40-foot lots. So here is the kind of an older, this is the plan, how it evolved. Rob took you through this with the townhomes that eventually became single-family on the north side of the property. And they also had access points over onto Champions Drive. Those were eventually modified with a new plan. The new plan showing, there you go, there's your new plan. The new plan showed the access point coming off of Champions and onto International Golf Drive. So where there were 4 access points, there are now 3 access points to the development. One other feature that I wanted to mention about the property, all of the lots that are fronting over on International Golf Drive, those are all going to be 50-foot lots. The internal lots are going to be the 40-foot lots. So there you go. Do that again. Okay. So as far as modifications that are requested as part of the PD rezoning application, one is model homes. The applicant is requesting to have a maximum of 5 model homes. 3 model homes typically are permitted with the Land Development Code in a subdivision. There's modifications to lot development criteria from the Land Development Code. These include the lot width to 40 feet. As I mentioned, some will be 40 feet, some will be 50 feet. 50 feet is what our standard size is for a single-family lot. Lot area for the 40-foot lots is requested to be reduced to the 4,800 feet. Rear setback is a request to reduce that from 25 feet to 10 feet. Accessory setback, it says from 7.5 feet to 1.5 feet. The actual 1.5 feet is just for pool equipment, AC equipment, accessory structures, pool enclosures would be a 5-foot setback. And then there's also a request for building lot coverage to 60%, which is a modification. As far as open space set aside, there is a request to modify the requirement where 40% of required open space set asides for a residential development must be active recreation area. Instead, 100% of the open space set aside area will be passive recreation. I think they probably would have met the 40% with the active park, but because the park is no longer there, they won't have the active recreation. Signage, there's a modification request to allow the Land Development Code allows 2 monument signs per residential subdivision. Originally, they had a request for 4 monument signs, and I believe that was when they had the 4 access points. I think the applicant, and they can speak to this, the request is actually going to be for 3 monument signs. Excuse me. I got one more, I'm sorry. And then there was a waiver for perimeter landscaping for the property would abut wetland area or tree preservation area. So as far as a recommendation, provided all the modifications are accepted, staff recommends approval, recommends the planning board forward the rezoning of the 36.5 acre property of single family residential to planned development to the city commission with a recommendation of approval. A majority vote of the planning board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the city commission. Item is tentatively scheduled to be heard at the city commission for first reading on March 5th and for second reading on March 19th. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Dennis? Seeing none, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Gordon, you can see.
No, go ahead.
Nope, you're good. Okay. Hear from the applicant, please.
Try to be brief, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Rob Merrill, again for the record with Cobb Cole. You know, you guys are accustomed to these PD zoning, so I don't have to read the whole book about it to you, but I think some of the folks in the audience might not know, but this is a custom zoning for this particular piece of property, so it's not a cookbook, type categorical. It's for this property only. So it consists of a plan of development, including things like architectural elevations and landscape plans and such, and then a written document that's a development agreement, which becomes the zoning book for the property, if you will. You guys are accustomed to these. They're a negotiated zoning, essentially. So as Parker kind of gave you the timeline, I think it's obvious to you guys that there was a negotiation that's been going on for 3 years where this thing has been squeezed and pushed and changed and access points taken away and open space being added instead of parks and landscaping along the perimeter to make sure nobody can see the houses and a lot of things like that. So Parker, when he was giving you his presentation, said that there's some more detailed stuff that he wants to get into, and including things like drainage questions that have come up and things of that nature. So I'm going to let Parker kind of go through that. But I will say before I sit down that, Dennis, you're right about the 4 signs versus 3. So the signs that show how to get into the project essentially are at each entrance. And so we eliminated one of the 4 entrances. We still have the 3. So we would still need the 3 signs. And to the extent any of the other dimensional type considerations need to be discussed, Parker can do that. But this is a product that you saw the architectural renderings of the houses in the plant in the package you guys got. These guys do a lot of this. So I think that all of the where the air conditioner needed a different setback and that sort of thing, we can get into if you want to, but it's based on product that they've done. And it's been proven. So thanks, Rob. Parker.
Thanks, Rob. Hi, Parker.
Parker Minchenberg, 1729 Ridgewood Avenue. Go to a lot of public hearings, and drainage is the big issue. So within the last year, city staff has come out with some more stringent drainage requirements. And it's not like a design engineer. You know, I'm a professional engineer and don't want to design anything new that floods. And I also don't want to design anything that floods the neighbors. So we've got other folks that watch us, so we don't do that. You've got multiple engineers at the city that we have a set of calculations, we have state-of-the-art software, and this is kind of what I do for 40 years in Daytona Beach in my business. So this particular piece of property is already partially developed as filled golf holes, driving range. Some of it's still wooded. And so all of LPGA, back when the DRI was done and the golf course was built, whenever we design a portion of it, and, I heard people live in Centennial Park, I designed it. Greyhawk 1, Greyhawk 2, I designed it. The clubhouse parking lot, I designed it. Sedona, the ones they've been talking about, Links Terrace, Legends Preserve, and now Grand Champion, which is going to be called Ironwood. Guilty, I designed it.
I detect a pattern here.
Yes, and, my firm, we design a lot of residential subdivisions, very proud of all of them. And this particular site, maybe Dennis, we can bring up the plan again, but it already has stormwater management in the master LPGA system. When you look at the plan, we're building next to the driving range another big wet detention stormwater treatment lake. So we're going to be able to exceed, we could just develop it and go into the existing system, but the roads are going to need fill and what have you, and we're not going to want to truck that through the neighborhood. So we're going to be providing additional stormwater management that's going to far exceed what this particular 121 lot needs, because the stormwater is already set up in the master for this. So I think that's sort of the drainage aspect of it. Thank you. And you can see that lake there next to the driving range that I was speaking of. So currently the golf holes have inlets, the practice holes, and they do drain. You can see the lake to the left, the upper left, and there's actually an existing lake that's white on this plan that's along International that we're going to be expanding some. So we're going to meet all the St. John's Rural Water Management District criteria and all the city criteria as it relates to drainage. I wasn't involved in the original roadway design out there, and probably I'll make the statement, if I would have designed it, I probably would have built the main road out there a foot higher. I mean, you can see water easing out of the curbs and what have you. So I think for this project, we're not at the point where the city's reviewing the drainage, but it'll be scrutinized in a lot of detail, and we will exceed the current drainage requirements with this development when that time comes. Some of the landscaping issues, a few of my engineers, myself and one other engineer, were dual registered as landscape architects. So, I did the landscape plan for Buc-ee's and for the outlet mall, and, so we're pretty good at landscape design as well. And we listened to the neighbors. There was concern about people that front on International Golf being able to see their backyards. And frankly, this developer is concerned about their new residents seeing the traffic. So we agreed, and in the PD, we're going to plant continuous hedge along the backs of all the lots that'll then back up to a natural area that then backs up to Champions Drive that has street trees. So the intent with that is to screen the lots that are next to International, and also the same type of landscaping will occur on the golf course side. It's not just the lots that front on the main road. So it'll be well screened with landscaping. I'm trying to think what else Rob wanted me to talk about. Utilities. So there was a gentleman that talked about his water pressure, and I'm not debating, that his spigot doesn't flow more or less. But whenever we do a development, the real water user and the thing that needs pressure isn't the toilet or the shower, it's the fire hydrants. So there is a requirement that all the hydrants in a new development, and this new development will have some, they have to be spaced 500 feet or less, and they have to be able to deliver 1,000 gallons a minute. We do computer modeling, and the city staff reviews it. And if you have 1,000 gallons a minute coming out of a hydrant, a lot of the older neighborhoods where folks live used to be 500 gallons a minute, and they're taking showers and flushing toilets with 500 gallons a minute. So the anticipation is they're through a hydraulic analysis that we prepare and the city reviews, there's going to be sufficient water pressure. The city of Daytona, unlike some of the other municipalities that I work, you guys have a lot of additional capacity in your treatment plants. You stay ahead of the demand. It's not like, oh, how are we going to serve that development because we don't have potable water or we don't have sewer disposal. So the plants still have capacity, and every time we do a development, we have to analyze water and sewer demand, and it's reviewed by the city staff. So you guys don't permit projects that impact utilities around us. A couple examples, when we did Buc-ee's, kind of a couple of the apartment complexes, the Atlantica, they actually had to pay a fair share toward downstream lift station and force main improvements. So your staff makes sure that we don't do something to the infrastructure that hurts the other folks that live around us. So with that, maybe I can answer some questions.
Let me hit you up, Parker, with one. On the one of the waivers that's being asked for is the requirement for a minimum amount of active recreational areas in the open space set-asides. I'm assuming that is specifically to reduce traffic and not have an active recreation area which would draw people to it.
I can speak to that. In order for, you have passive and you have active recreation. So passive would be you got a bench next to the lake. You go sit. Active typically, and I do a lot of these, but it's a pathway with, sometimes they have exercise stations, sometimes just a walking path. And if you pull the plan back up, Dennis, and I apologize. Okay, you can see kind of those green areas headed to the lake. On the lot side, there is an active pathway. So we do have some of that. And Dennis mentioned this earlier, when we had the park that was kind of suggested by city staff, but then the residents didn't want it. With that park, we would have met the active. So when we eliminated the park and agreed to make it a treat area, that's when we have enough passive to meet it, but we don't have enough active.
I see. Thank you. Any other questions for Parker? And then I hope Rob wants to get back up, please. Bernie?
I have a question. Where are you going to build this? Can you walk out there now with boots, without boots? Is it wet now?
If you go out there right now, there's a practice hole and you could play a hole of golf. Adjacent to it, we do have some wetlands that would hold water. So some of both.
Because a lot of people bring up stormwater retention areas. Basically, it's nothing but a borrow pit. That's what it is. It's a borrow pit, and when no matter how deep you dig it, the water is still going to stay at the same level as the groundwater. So my question is, the direct runoff from your retention areas, or detention, I should say, is where's it going to run off to? Into the storm drains?
Yes, there'll be Miami curb and gutter on the roads. They'll collect water to inlets that used to be, we put them 400-foot runs. Your new code, 200. So this one will have twice as many as the last one I designed. Those will then be piped to the new lake that I spoke to you of. That lake will have storage in it, and then when it gets to an overflow elevation, it'll overflow into the master system, which is already sized to handle this property. So that's the extra storage that I was mentioning. And a point you made, it's kind of like, I've heard this so many times, well, if you dig it another 10 foot deeper, you'll have more storage. No, it's from normal water up, and it doesn't matter if it's 5 feet deep or 55 feet deep, the storage is the same. So you had that right.
I know. I've been doing this a lot longer than you. So let's put it like that. And that's one of the problems that we're having here in Daytona, a lot of flooding areas, of course, a lot of low areas. And the more we build, I voted for the building, but I think that there's going to come to a time, and I think we're coming to it very fast, that there's going to be different requirements, and possibly by the time that you go to build this, the requirements will be different, because there's a lot of talk here in the city about not a moratorium, but a little less or a little bit more restrictive on where you build and the elevations that you use. I know the St. John's Water Management, I know they're talking about it. And, you know, there's so much, and let's face it, the reason that they built the golf course over there was wetlands to start off with. You know, so let's make sure everybody understands that. Wasn't high and dry to start off with. But good luck. And hopefully that, you know, in the near future, hopefully the storm pattern has been a little different here lately, and hopefully it's going to change.
People don't want to hear that, but it's true, you know. Hadn't had snow up, you know, 100 years, and we got it.
9 inches of snow up there, that's a lot of snow.
All right, thanks. See if anybody else. Yeah, just stay with me.
Mr. Zervan just did that to
Those
wake us
chairs
all
are
up, and it
tippy.
sure worked for me, I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Well-
I had a question.
Yes,
I guess
please.
just to expound a
Barber.
little bit, it was just the flooding issue, and the flooding issue because of the current system that's actually there, and with the rains and so forth, to take away from some of the ground where it would go into the ground, it would definitely run off into the road. And I know you said you have extra storage and so forth, but would the capacity be enough by putting those 120 homes in there? I mean,
Yes, I'll have to demonstrate that, Tony. And that just reminded me of one other thing. There was discussion about how the golf holes are wet. That's the major disposal for the city's reuse. I don't know if everybody knows that, but it gets hammered with reuse because they have to get rid of it, and that's one of the places that it goes. It's not just rainwater.
Anything else for Parker? Yes, sir?
Over.
How y'all doing?
Good.
You know, my issues are the waivers, right? And that's what I want to discuss with you. Because remember we talked about how we impact development and certain things we have no control over. But the waivers we do. You have 3 entrances, so you don't need 4 signs.
We don't.
So-
Yes, and that was a holdover. We'll go with, we only need 3, and that's what we're going to ask for.
So we'll make the change to 3?
Yes.
Now, the model homes, you have 3 entrances. You don't need 5 model homes.
You know what that has to do with? It's model homes get started right after you have the roads based and the hydrants in. So it's sort of a jump start to be able to bring houses online. And I think if that was a huge issue for you guys, that's something we could waiver. That's a pun, but we could waiver on. But I think the model homes, you know, there was actually some state legislation, and Rob probably knows better than I, where they were going to let you build 50% of the houses. I don't know if that ever got.
I don't think it did.
It didn't get, okay. But that's something,
Yes, 'cause
we'd
it
like
is.
to have the 5 model homes, but if that's a sticking point for you.
It is. And I'm looking at the impact in terms of the neighbors, right, to reduce their opposition, okay?
And just a point on that, there's really no neighbors that live right next to this parcel.
I know.
Okay.
I know. Landscaping, explain that to me. You said you want to waive the requirement for perimeter landscaping.
What that's about is, imagine your house is next to a wetland that we're preserving, and it's got a 25 or a 50-foot upland buffer that we're preserving. So you're looking at nice woods, cypress trees, beautiful wetland. What we're wavering from is planting a hedge and bringing in additional trees that block. It's already landscaped in the backyard. So that's what that's about.
We're doing preservation instead.
We're preserving trees.
If you
instead
look
of
along
planting.
the road, Milverton, if you looked at it, you'll see that there's a lot of heavy vegetation, and then we're putting more behind it.
Okay. Yeah, accessory setback. You're going from 7 and 7.
And those, you know, we've done, I don't know how many of these PDs we've done. Those are the standards now. In the LDC, they didn't really address like the air conditioner.
or the pool pump for the pool or the screen enclosure. So those are pretty standard in most of the PDs you've approved over the last number of years. You agree with that, Dennis?
I would agree, and as a matter of fact, one of the items we have on our agenda today is kind of doing some amendments to the land development code that really address some of the things that we keep seeing with these planned developments. And this is probably one we should have had on the list, but we'll bring something back to make sure it gets included.
And you know, I don't like bringing waivers. I try not to, but these, I don't think they're real.
Well, we can negotiate, right?
Yeah.
The building lot coverage, the LDC requirement is 35. You're wanting 60%.
Yeah, and we did that. We could live with probably 50 or 55, but we put 60. And in line with what Tony said, Tony wants to make sure that we don't build little houses that devalue the other houses in the area. So they're planning on building, kind of their sweet spot is an 1,800 and maybe 50 square foot house with a 400 or so square foot garage, so around 2,200. If we didn't ask for that waiver, the biggest house we could build would be 2,100 square feet, and we really want to build a couple hundred square feet more than that. That way the houses will be priced higher and won't do what Tony was worried about, devalue other houses in the neighborhood.
Okay. What are the public benefits? I didn't see.
We'll let Rob answer that.
Yeah, so Milburn, I think you know the drill. I mean, we're adding tax base, we're adding housing opportunities. We talk about need for housing still. People still need a place to live. You know, and the fact that you're doing 40s and 50s, you can't say that they're affordable in the sense that we talk about some of the affordable based on government help. But these are going to be relatively affordable, we hope, for people who need housing.
Rob, are you going to be exceeding code requirement for the landscaping along International Golf Drive?
I meant to say that, again, in this negotiation that's been going on for 3 years, we've done a lot of things. And a lot of them had to do with that, Dennis, as well as trying to make sure this project worked with the golf course aspects that are happening, like you didn't mention the golf cart, connectivity and pedestrian connectivity and such. So all that's happening too, and so we kind of rushed through some of those things that are already on the plan that really were an evolution that happened over 3 years. So the landscaping is included. So we're doing those things in large part as a result of people telling us they wanted that, for the last 3 years. And it's a give and take. It's a negotiated. We've done a lot of negotiating to get here, but Milberton, if you got something like the model homes that is, a problem for you, just let us know. I mean, you guys, here's the place where you guys get to say, this is something I don't like in particular, and we could tell you, we can deal with that if we need to.
Now, on your monument signs, will they apply to the zoning?
They'll be code compliant. It's just the number of them. So we just want one at each entrance. It's more of a.
They're going to be pretty modest. They're going to be monument signs, less than 8 foot in height. I think we have 48 square feet. I have to look at it, but they're going to be sort of modest, just so if somebody's coming to visit you, you're going to see, hey, that's the name of that subdivision.
And you did away with the park.
Yeah, originally we had a public park, and the neighbors didn't really like the idea of, somebody from Beachside or whatever driving over and,
not you, Vern,
having a party there at the park. So what we did is we eliminated that access that went to the north. That was one of the accesses we eliminated, and we left the whole treat area there. So there's going to be a treat area between the golf course parking and this development.
So you're at the golf club looking towards this project. You can't see it. It's all woods.
It's going to be all trees instead of the park.
And you're taking care of the animals?
They're all going to be in the trees. We hope.
Okay. Do we have anything else for the applicants?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, guys. Well, move forward to our speakers. We have a number of them for this item. I'd ask you to try to keep your comments, name, address, 3 minutes, and try to keep it to the rezoning as opposed to the small-scale comp plan that we just discussed in item 4A. Starting with Pat Connors. Mr. Connors, good evening.
You guys have long meetings, thank God. Patrick Connors, 126 Dockside Place, Daytona Beach. Before I start, let me ask a question. We were talking about negotiations with the builders, correct? In negotiations, does the 2.5 year before a shovel goes in the ground part of that negotiation?
Can you help me there, Rob? I wasn't party
That's
to.
my
so
bad,
don't
so I
know.
will answer. Normally, we wait till the end, but with the agreement actually says no CO until 2.5 years after this is done. So we're delaying occupying any houses for 2.5 years. So the shovel thing is not, somebody had misquoted that.
Okay, so.
That was me.
There's no more, so there's no more negotiation about that. Because quite frankly, the infrastructure is not handling it. Mike, you and I know what's going on in our neighborhood. I live in Latitude, Margaritaville. We have a problem right now with the city of Daytona because our gray water is not functioning right. The infrastructure of that road, LPGA, it's all great to have all these plans, but I believe you were right, Vernon. Where's the dollars?
Right.
Okay? So if, I don't know even how homes are going to sell in there because I know now that there's sales are going down. If you drive out there and drive back off hours, you're still hitting traffic. On hours, my lovely wife worked at the Department of Health. Now you all know where Department of Health is and you know where Margaritaville is. It would take her in the morning 35 to 40 minutes to get there. Okay? Anybody moving there, you suggested, Mr. Robinson, look at the future plans. Shame on me. But I'll tell you what, shame on anybody else that's moving here. Because I'm telling you, it's a disaster, a true disaster. And I don't live in a community, so that's why I didn't talk about rezoning. That's something that is going to happen. But I'm asking you all, if there's negotiations happening, negotiate right now about not shoveling the ground until the money hits the bank that we can build LPGA, widen it, and widen the bridge. I'm not talking about going out, what they're talking about on the ramps coming off of 95 and stuff. I'm just talking about getting across there, okay? Thank you very much, and I really appreciate the work you do because I know how hard it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Appreciate it. All right, next we have Alan Cooper, please. Is Alan here? Yeah, okay. We got some folks that decided to take back their evening. Greg Rubin, are you still here, Greg? Yes, you are. I see you coming up. Name, address, and 3 minutes. Resilient. We like that.
I definitely am resilient. My wife will attest to that. A couple things. Can you tell me if the commissioner who represents LPGA community is here today?
No.
Well,
I think it's very inappropriate to have this discussion without her here. I think it's potentially it could be litigated, and I'm not a lawyer, don't get me wrong, but I think it's a big, big, big mistake. I think a lot of you brought up some good points, but to not have the person that we voted for, something that affects our community and our houses, not here for something this significant is absolutely inappropriate. And, you know, I understand she may have a conflict. I understand she may be sick, but I think it should have been postponed. And I think we should redo this session with her here.
If I may, the planning board is an advisory board to the city commission. This item, both of these items still have to go to the city commission for approval actually, one of them is 2 public hearings. I think the other one is a public hearing where you get an opportunity to speak. And the commissioners are there at that meeting to actually vote on whether or not to approve it. So this is an advisory board to the city commission.
I understand.
You'll get your time at bat with.
Pardon me?
You'll get your time at bat with.
I know, but I understand. I think to have this session without her here to defend, those of us who live there, and I think most of the people in this room live in or around it, is a mistake. I just, just wanted to bring it up. Could you put the waiver, the waivers on? like I mentioned, I've been here 28 years. And when I bought my house, I asked for a small waiver and was told, we don't give waivers, no waivers, not a possibility. And I don't see it yet.
He's going to put it on now.
Okay, great.
Was your waiver,
I think
was your waiver through the builder or through the city?
Through the city, the house was already built. It was a model home. But to the density issue, and I'm nearly going to pull it up. But the density issue, and what's hard for me, I think all of you have the best interests of LPGA and Daytona Beach at heart, and I do understand that. And I do appreciate your service. I know it's not an easy thing to do, but somebody said we don't want to have the existing homeowners affected by this. Well, the density issue it's easy to solve. Yes, we want nicer houses, but instead of having these little tiny lots, let's have bigger lots, bigger houses, and the normal density, which you all have determined. It's an easy solution, and I don't know if that means it goes from 120 to 90 or what the number is. But all you got to do is change the number of units, and you can have your cake and eat it too, and you'll have houses that'll be more representative of what I think Daytona Beach wants to have. So I appreciate the time. I know you've all worked on it hard. I'm sure the people who've been involved here, both from the city and from the attorneys, have worked hard. But this is one piece, and I've played these golf courses for 28 years, and they're different, and I understand that. And I tell my friends, we knew sooner or later this was going to happen, but this is a piece that we didn't expect. So I thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it. Is Brady still here? I don't believe he is. Okay, I thought I saw him leave. How about Tom Hayden? Tom? No? Okay. Crystal Cross? Crystal? No, I thought it's sorry. Okay. Jacob Barr? Jacob? No? Okay. Okay, there's Greg. Cameron. You knew we'd get to you, right?
There we go. Yeah. Listen, if you just stay, you'll get spoken to. Cameron Woolley, 128 Links Terrace Boulevard. So thank you again for hearing me. I've got a couple of comments. So first of all, on the drainage issue, I own a home in Links Terrace, and my family owns a home in Legends Preserve. And if those are any indication of the sort of drainage that goes on, it is not good. The lots are consistently wet. They are consistently flooding. We, in Links Terrace, have had the gutters pulled up once already, and they still do not work right. Like the gutters, like we had people jackhammering the gutters out of our streets to try and make the water flow correctly. Still doesn't flow correctly. Muddy gutters, muddy lots. My lawn is half the time a puddle. So if that is indicative of the sort of drainage planning that has been done based on the previous experience that was shared, just keep that in mind. As somebody who lives there, it's not been executed 100% correctly. Now, talking about the compromise issue. So it's my first one of these meetings so far, so I'm kind of catching the flow of it. And I would second the motion about compromise. In our neighborhood, we do have small lots. It is our starter home as a young family. My husband and I and our dog, and hopefully soon our children, will be living in these lovely starter homes. However, when you have these concessions for smaller home lots and therefore smaller homes, there is also a certain amount of these that are being bought up by landlords as rental properties, which is introducing a really strong, less committed group. You have college renters, you have people who are living short term, and there is a difference in between how people who own their homes and people who are, in a lot of these cases, renting their homes, maintain those properties. And I would ask that we revoke that waiver for the smaller lots and therefore smaller homes. Let's make them 50-foot lots. Let's reduce that density. One, you're going to help that drainage because you're going to have less strain on the system. And two, it's something that we can push back on in that regard. I want to live in a community of people who are established here. I want my kids to grow up knowing their neighbors. I want my kids to go to the schools and grow up alongside the other children in the neighborhoods. And I think that's something that you get a lot more of when you have a more homeowner-centric area, as opposed to, again, landlords buying up 3 or 4 houses in an area because they are more affordable, which doesn't help our affordable housing crisis, right? Because the people who need them are paying jacked up rent prices for them, and the landlords are going to keep jacking them up, driving people out, and setting up a revolving door in the neighborhood. So I would argue in favor of pushing for those 50-foot lots. In the same regard, less model homes if we can, right? There's no reason to need 5 model homes for 3 entrances. It also introduces an extra element of traffic. You have people coming in, shopping the houses, checking it out. It's one extra thing. Thank you so much for hearing me this evening, and have a great rest of your night. Thanks for
Thank you.
staying late.
Appreciate it, Cameron. Thank you. Okay, Susan Moxley. Susan, thanks for sticking it out.
Sure thing. Thank you.
Name and address in 3 minutes. You know the drill. You've been up here once already.
Susan
Thank you.
Moxley, 3244 Legends Preserve Drive, Daytona Beach. Thank you again for listening to us tonight. Just a background, I'm a retired superintendent here in Florida in a very large, fast-growing district. So I understand where you sit. I've been there, done that, and built many a school. So I understand working with county government, planning commissions, and all of that. You want to negotiate? I think that's a fabulous idea and a great suggestion, and I concur with what she actually said what I wanted to say, so I will not repeat it. But I do think at this point in time, I don't want to stop growth. I think we have the responsibility to manage growth and manage growth effectively and efficiently to protect the rights of the landowner, but to protect the rights of the community and the residents and why we purchase there. I understand what you were saying about the infrastructure, and I liken it to accidents happen. We can't prevent them. They happen. May not be anybody's fault. But if you're bleeding and you're bleeding to death, somebody's going to intervene to stop the bleeding, right? And you're going to get help. And I think that's what our responsibility is. And you sitting in, I know this is a volunteer position, and I thank you for the time. You're here for your expertise, and we have to trust and rely on that expertise. But it's about managing the bleed at this point in time. And the gentleman that spoke over here, he's exactly right. I mean, our entrance to our road comes out of our neighborhood right where one of the middle entrances to this one. And we're seeing the concrete trucks, we're seeing the dump trucks not following the speed limits, just hauling down the road. We have buses letting off children walking to their homes in the neighborhood. And now we're going to add 120 more homes. And I understand 2.5 years out is a concession they've made. I appreciate that. But the fact of the matter is the infrastructure cannot handle where we are now. Yes, we can flush our toilets and turn on our sinks and use our dishwashers and all of that, but it's about the flooding. The area where the landscape is that they were talking about, that is swamp right now. And just in our own situation in Legends Preserve, and I'm on one of the golf holes, after Milton, it was all flooded for weeks where you couldn't even run the golf cart through the golf path. Where did that water go? It had to be absorbed. And now we're going to take 120 homes times the average of 2 cars per home. And we're going to have that traffic is going to increase in the current status, not the theory, not the textbook. So again, let's stop the bleed. Let's manage it. Let's negotiate. I agree. Let's put the 50-foot lots in there, because if you are doing a 65% building of the lot, there is not a lot of room and green space for that water to go. And you've just taken up all the green space for the 120 homes with the concrete and the driveway and all that other good stuff. Let's manage the bleed. That's my request, is let's manage the bleed.
Thank you. Do we have Amy Knox or Karen Knox? Are they here? I think they left. Okay. All right. Ann Ruby, hi.
Ann Ruby, 137 Park Avenue. I think it would be interesting if one of you would ask how many homes they would have to reduce by to have all 50-foot lots. I think that's a useful piece of information. So I know I can't ask them to produce that number, but maybe one of you guys could. I think that would be great. Okay, thank you. The other thing is, I would like to see the landscaping requirements in the PD for the lots be native. Why don't we try to have this be an innovative thing where the lawns aren't all grass, that need irrigation and fertilizer and weed killers. I think we need to start writing that into the PDs. Use native plants, native gardening. It's important. And that will help with water absorption. Big mats, thick mats of that rooty green grass that's so gross down here, that doesn't absorb water very well. So I really think that if you could ask them to write that into the PD, I think that would be marvelous. And that's all I have for tonight, except for the next one. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Okay, next would be Katie Davis. Name and address, please.
All right.
Thank you.
Katie Davis, 106 Pitching Wedge Drive. And I am in Links Terrace also. So I'm going to say ditto to a lot of that. And I think, I don't know what waivers were given for Links Terrace, but if waivers were given for smaller lots, for a little bit narrower of streets, smaller lots meaning shorter driveways. And I don't know if this is the commission that does that, but I think that seriously needs to be looked at because it causes street hazards of cars having to be parked in the streets. You cannot get through. You know, you don't have a 2-lane street anymore when someone parks on the street. And it's dangerous. You're waiting, So, the question I would have on the timing of this development is there are still a lot of approved development going on all along LPGA Boulevard from 95 to 92 that homes have not yet been built. The Ironwood development, as I know it, that name, I don't even think I don't know that one home is occupied by a resident yet. And it's a significant number of homes. And again, I don't know if this commission's responsibility, but, and back to the infrastructure, frankly, I think groundbreaking on any new development should be paused until that bridge is fixed, because it is an absolute parking lot on LPGA. It can be backed up to past Tournament Drive, close to LPGA headquarters, quite often. So if there's a way to do that, because I don't know 2.5 years is going to be enough for that bridge to get fixed. For LPGA, forget 4 lanes. How about just 3? You know, a center turn lane, a couple more stoplights. It's just, it's really difficult. We've made a statement that if you injure yourself at your home, and maybe in a normal situation, you'd take yourself to urgent care because you figure you could get there and they'll do whatever they need to do for you to stop losing blood or whatever it be. We've joked that we need to call an ambulance because we can't get in our cars and get out to a medical facility in what might not cause a severe problem.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, next here is John Grunder. Hope I got that close. Hi, John. Bad reading on my part, sir.
Hi, thank you. My name's John Gunter.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I live at 24 Promenade at Lion's Paw. It's my first meeting of this type, and I'm learning a lot today. Thank you all for your service. I didn't realize you were volunteers. Thought we were talking to elected officials here, so my bad. Thank you. I'm a business guy, run a small business. We have a mission statement. And so I was sitting there listening to everybody today, all my neighbors, and I thought, what is the mission statement of the planning board, right? Do we have one? So I looked it up. I'm on your website. The mission of the planning division, which I think is the same, you guys, right? Mission of the planning division is to assist the city in maintaining its comprehensive plan and land development regulations in a manner that responds to community values. Right? So, manner that responds to community values. So I've been listening for a couple hours here, however long it's been so far, to neighbors complaining about flooding from the new developments that have already occurred, the traffic issues, which I personally am experiencing as well. Trying to get out of our neighborhood is impossible in the morning between 7:30, 8:30 in the morning. You can't get out. 25 minutes just to exit. So my ask is, as a planning board, the planning, keyword planning, echoes, I guess I'm a ditto to some of my previous people here that are talking about, let's not do another development until we're ready with the roads. It just doesn't make sense, common sense. I mean, in the first section, I didn't get up to talk about 4A, but there was a lot of, it's just common math, right? There's common concept. This is common sense that we shouldn't be adding more and more without the capacity to handle the more. So that's all. I'm just saying, please consider that in your role and remember the community's portion, of what they're saying in accordance with your mission statement.
And John, thank you for using ditto. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, John Nicholson. One more time with feelings, sir.
I don't know about the feelings part. John Nicholson, 413 North Granbury Avenue. I wanted to ask just one question, and then as people spoke, I added more and more. My question was, the trees in the north section, where the park was supposed to be and they decided to take out the park, it was in one of the diagrams showing a retail area. Does this plan then now saying with 120 houses that those trees will be kept in perpetuity? That they cannot come back and say, oh, this was going to be retail, we want to put retail in. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Are we saying those trees are there to be permanently trees?
Yes.
Right?
To allow the retail, they would have to go back through the process, planning board, city commission, to allow that land use. If this land use that was recommended for approval were to go through, they would have to get it changed back again to allow that. So
go through the meat grinder again.
Secondly, traffic. I was talking to somebody the other day. 2 traffic lights is the pits for me. All right. If I sit through a second traffic light, I'm nuts. I just can't take it. I hate 1, let alone 2. Now, in Miami, they have an area called Kendall Drive at 117th, and we're talking almost an hour to go 2-3 blocks. All right. Other people looking at us coming from New York or Chicago or Atlanta, so what traffic? They don't see our problems as major traffic because where they come from, this is nothing. All right. Now,
They don't have cars.
Yep. Regarding the flooding, the county just went through this whole thing. They did like a 6-hour meeting on flooding. The staff came up and said, you do realize that we had gone through 10 or 12 years of lower than average rain, that we didn't flood for years. And then the last 4 years, especially with Helen or whatever, we got a deluge, all right? And that's what's happening all over town, all right? Add that to the sea level rise. Our water table is up. What our ground can absorb is not there anymore. So that is sitting there. And then you hear the gentleman saying, oh, by the way, your reuse water, we're sticking it in the LPGA golf course, which in the past, it was a perfect thing to do. Water the lawn, get rid of the water. Well, now, with the water already there, it just floods, all right? There are reasons for a lot of this stuff, all right? And lastly, If we go to the 50-foot wide lots for all of them, what do we lose? Because they've got to take the land from somewhere else. Do those trees vanish? Does the pond vanish? Thank you.
Thank you, John. That's all the green forms that I have. Did want to mention before we ask for a motion that want to be sure that we all are in agreement with Mr. Robinson's great idea to reduce the 5 model homes to 3. And I didn't see any opposition to that, but I want to at least get a heads up and ask the motion maker to make that adjustment in their motion. Oh, thank you. And to correct the monument signs, thank you, from 4 to 3, and we'll give Mr. Robinson credit for that one too. With that, asking for a motion on item 4B, please.
Okay. I make a motion that we approve Plan Development General Rezoning DV 2022-095 LPGA Golf Villas PD with those 2 changes. So.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Thank you very much. Moving. Question? Anybody want just, we want to muddle through here? Or do we need a 5-minute? 5 minutes.
I thought Ann Ruby had a question.
Let's keep going.
Oh, you have a, I'm sorry, Ann, what are you?
Can I ask how many lots, how many properties they'd have to reduce by if they had 50-foot frontage? The lot size issue just got.
Forgot.
Rob.
Hey, Rob, before you, could I ask you to come up, please? Even though we.
The next one.
Yeah, sorry about that, buddy. And this is my fault. We're having discussion about perhaps having more of the lots, if not all the lots, be 50-foot lots as opposed to 40. Would that be something that you folks would, one, consider and take a look at and see what that would change things from the 120 to what number?
Let us run the numbers. The developer's not here with me.
Okay.
The property owner's not here with me, unfortunately. But I would say that when we had, you were talking about Lynx Terrace, right? Yeah. So Parker did Lynx Terrace. I think he's gone now, but that was 40s, right? Yours are 40s?
Yeah, and that's where we have that high rental, that high turnover.
I see.
We're looking for a larger.
So the rental thing is, it's a sticky wicket. So in
challenging,
Daytona,
yeah.
we've been dealing with the rental, whether it's short-term or long-term, but the long-term stuff, you can't really tell somebody they can't rent to somebody else if it's long-term, because that's anybody's house, I think, can be rented as long as it's more than 6 months or a year. And what Jessica pointed out to me was she pulls, it's amazing what people can pull up on their phone. I saw you using your phone too, but she found on the phone that the waivers that we were going through just now are the same ones that Lynx Terrace has. Other than the Parker's 55 or 60, it's 50 for yours. So, it's pretty close to what that is, and I don't know how that has effect on somebody renting or not. I mean, I know there's lots of people that are renting houses that are bigger too, but
A higher home value makes it more difficult for somebody to come in and set up 3 to 4
Well, could have,
houses.
Rob, I hesitate to make that a condition because we don't know necessarily how definitive this change is going to be. But could you ask the applicant to take a look at it?
let me say
for
this:
us?
we just lost
And
our
we can have a
expert.
discussion in the future.
But let you can rest assured, I'm here just about every month, and we will make sure that when we go to the commission, we'll talk about that and see how that plays out.
All right, fair enough. Thank you. Okay. Moving forward to item 4C. Madam Secretary, please. Whoops, yes? Oh, you want to take that break? All right, then, break it is. 5 minutes, please.
Item 4C.
Hold on, we're going to take a 5-minute break.
Take a 5-minute break.
Oh, great.
Oh. Please, moving on to item 4C. Madam Secretary, please.
Item 4C.
They did it for you.
It's on? Oh, okay. Item 4C, Fairlawn Preliminary Plat, DEV 2024-099, quasi judicial hearing.
Thank you. Luke, way to hang in there for 3.5 hours. Good to see you.
Good
Go ahead,
afternoon, Planning Board.
Evening, yes.
My name is Luke. I am a planner here in the city of Daytona Beach, and I am presenting item 4C, Major Subdivision Preliminary Plat for the Fairlawn development. Fairlawn is a request by Randy Hudak of Cohen and Associates Inc. on behalf of Adam Wolfson. Sorry, I don't have my glasses. Adam Wolfson is the title VP of Volusia Retail to approve a preliminary plat for the construction of a multifamily development with a commercial business center and off-site compensating storage pond. The site is 204 acres, located east of Clyde Morris Boulevard and north of Strickland Range Road. You can see the site location right here, is Strickland and Clyde Morris. The same, but an aerial image. The future land use is level 1 residential. And the current zoning is PDG, the Fairlawn Preliminary Development. Okay. And then here is the plat map for the subdivision itself. The proposed major preliminary plat is consistent with all lot dimensions, access, and infrastructure requirements outlined in Article 7 of the Land Development Code and subject to the Fairlawn Plan District Agreement. Platting of 204 total acres with an on-site project area of 50 acres. Residential and commercial development is planned with 350 townhome units at a density of 6.93 units per acre. The land is, at this point, vacant. Approval of the major preliminary plat allows for the applicant to move forward with the final plat approval process. Staff finds the major subdivision preliminary plat meets the review standards of section 3.K3B Land Development Code. Staff recommends the planning board approve the major subdivision preliminary plat for Fairlawn development to allow for the construction of residential and commercial improvements, including 350 townhome units. And a major vote of the planning board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the city commission.
Very good. Great job presenting staff report without your glasses. Well done.
Yeah,
I know if I was with mine, it would be a heck of a challenge. Did have a quick question for you, Luke. The land that we're talking about developing, we're not developing all of this land, are we? What percentage of the total plat?
About 25%. About 25% of the land.
50-ish in that area?
50 acres is being developed of 200 acres total. A lot of it is going to be that like storm drainage pond.
Great. Any other questions for Luke? Thank you, Luke. Appreciate it. Oh, jump right in. I'm sorry, Ms. Robson. Go right ahead.
What are we looking at? The Strickland Range Road or Thames Road?
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. In the staff report and the recommendation for approval, it erroneously states that the project is located near Thames Road and International Boulevard. This property is located north of Strickland Range Road and east of Clyde Morris. Yeah.
Where is that in the staff report?
In the recommendation.
That's for the record.
Yeah.
Nice job, Mr. Robinson. Way to catch that. Okay, while Luke's looking that up, any other questions for staff, please? Seeing none, thank you, Luke. Appreciate it.
And I apologize for that mistake. I must have not saved or just accidentally
All's
undid it.
forgiven. No problem. No problem at all. Can we hear from the applicant, please?
Good evening.
Randy Hudak, Zev Cohen and Associates, 300 Interchange Boulevard. I thought I'd give Rob a little bit of break so he can catch his breath. We're really just here to answer any questions you may have.
Anything for the applicant?
School.
Oh, Mr. Robinson, then
Ms. Robinson.
The school that's nearby there, the Henson Middle School, on Strickland Range Road. What's the impact on that with the school?
You mean from a student population or?
Yeah.
We received school concurrency,
Uh-huh.
so I'm assuming they're okay with it.
Are you okay with it?
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
So we're both okay with this, what we're saying here.
We're
Very
okay.
good. Any other questions? Yes, please, Bernie.
On this large piece of property, that's mostly wetlands, isn't it?
It is, well, there's a significant portion of wetlands, correct.
Why the location of the retention ponds in the location where you have it?
If you notice the way that the subdivision is configured, we tried to take advantage of the upland portions that we have. So we're maneuvering in and out of wetland areas.
That's
sort
the
of
highest portion of the property.
Right, and it sort of elongates the development. So the ponds were strategically placed to in order to prevent long lengths of pipe runs. Try to capture as much area as we can. We're also utilizing the wetlands for stormwater attenuation as well to help hold back more water.
Because on the ponds there, you're going to use that for fill. It's going to be basically a borrow pit.
Yeah, there's a large borrow pit that we're excavating to the east, which is off-site. And that dirt will be used for our development along with some of the stormwater ponds.
Because I was just wondering, what are the residents of the subdivision by where you're building the retention pond? Oh, I'm sorry.
Tuscany.
The residents where you're building the pond next to their subdivision, have they had any comments on that, or?
We went through the public meeting process through the PD phase, and I believe one of the results of that meeting was we actually moved the borrow pit a little bit further west. I believe we're at least 100 feet, our borrow pit from development.
Are you going to any berm around it or anything? Because
it's all natural area. There's a small section of woods in between the borrow pit and the subdivision.
I know a lot of people are off of Strickland Road, past subdivisions come before the board. They're talking about where the existing area, they're raising the elevations and they're starting to have some budding in the areas. And that's what's just one. Dennis, have you heard any comments about that or anything?
Again, more time.
Okay.
It's about specifically.
Some of the areas on Strickland Road,
Right.
where there's been a lot of building.
Right.
They talked about the new subdivisions building it higher than the existing subdivisions, and so they're starting to get a little flooding around. And that's the reason I was asking about the retention pond being so close to an existing subdivision. Might make them a little nervous.
Well, that's the engineers do their analysis. I haven't heard about that, but this is
the stormwater that's going to be close to the subdivision is just a borrow pit. There's no stormwater that will be directed there. It's a hole in the ground. We're digging, taking the dirt out, and that's just left to be a large lake. We're not putting in any water in there that would fall from typical rainfall.
Then I have to ask you, where do you think the lowest point water runs?
To the lowest point on the ground.
Yeah, where you're digging that hole.
Right.
I
it would only improve the situation if the ground is higher there and I'm digging a hole and now I'm creating capacity for that area.
Well, it depends on the elevation of the existing subdivision there.
It's got to be higher than the hole.
Well, I don't know that.
It is.
Unless you show me, I don't see any topo elevations on this. So I'm saying I'm voting on something that I don't know, and you're telling me it does, and I'm sure you're probably right.
Yeah, and that information along with the construction plan, that's all included in the final plat submittal.
Oh, I know see, the problem, we have twofold problems here. You're voting on something we really don't have all the information. We've talked about this before. Until the plan gets, you can see the actual subdivision plan and elevations on it. I think in the future, especially with all the wetland that we're talking about, I think that the board should have something in front of it to at least analyze which way the water's running and, and approving your subdivision. I'm sure it's, there's a lot of open land there. I know it's wetlands right behind it, and just whether protecting the people that's already existing.
In this case, 75% of the land is not being developed, so you would hope there'd be a lot of opportunity for capacity.
Correct.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
But we don't know.
We do not.
Just what I'm telling you, that you're right. There are no construction plans in front of you tonight.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Randy? Anything else? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, I do not see green form, any green form. So someone would like to come, if you want to come up to speak for or against this item, now's the time. Seeing none, we'll move forward and ask for a motion on item 4C, please.
I make a motion that we approve Fairlands Development plat DV 2024-099 preliminary plat for overall subdivision.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say aye. Thank you very much. Moving forward to item 4D. Madam Secretary, good to see you guys. Have a good evening.
Item 4D, Sprouts, Site Plan DEV 2024-247, quasi judicial hearing.
Paula, before you get started, Paula, and you know this because we talked the other day, on the planning board, my wife is by far the most excited about this.
Sprouts.
Sprouts.
Me too.
She's just beyond thrilled.
Sprouts.
So with that,
Yes.
please.
I do. I'm very happy that we are getting a Sprouts. My name is
telling
Paula
you.
Long. I'm a planner here with the city, and I hope to make this very fast for all of us because we're all ready to go. All right. Tonight, I am here to present a request by Stephen Allen. Okay, go back, yes. I'm here to represent a request by Stephen Allen of Civil Corp Engineering, Inc. on behalf of the shops at Williamson Crossing to approve a major site plan constructing a total of 36,901 square feet of retail space between two buildings, one of them being Sprouts, with site improvements inclusive of water, sewer, drainage on 6.6 plus or minus acres of land. The site is actually located in the Williamson Crossing plan development at the northeast corner of Williamson and Cornerstone Boulevards. There are two lots that originally were there, Lot 6 and 7. They have been combined to create the space that we see now. You can see the aerial view that shows the property is vacant and currently undeveloped. The future land use on the property is mixed use, surrounded by the same. And as I mentioned, it is part of a planned development, Williamson Crossing. A little history about the site. November 2017, the Williamson Crossing Planned District Agreement was approved by the City Commission with a variety of commercial and residential uses. The agreement has received a few revisions, being amended and restated in 2019, which actually removed the residential uses. This, along with the other revisions, did come before you previously, so we won't get into all of the details about that because you've already approved it, already went to plan. It came here, it went to commission. The only item that actually did not come before you was a minor modification, which was actually done in 2021. It added 2 monument signs, and that was approved administratively. Again, it was a minor modification. In 2022, we did have the first amendment to the amended restated agreement, and we added at that time veterinary hospital and specific to locations, and there are specific standards that are related to those sites as well. We'll be happy to know that this site has plenty of parking. They actually have they have additional parking for both the grocery store use as well as the shopping center use. Shopping center use, which we'll see a little bit later, is projected to have about 6 spaces.
That's what we're seeing at this point. It could change a little bit. If it's a minor situation, then, it'll be negligible. It's not going to be more, which would cause us to have to come back here. All right. Do know that there are vehicular connections that we wish that we could have as many. We do have to make sure that motion around the site is what we need it to be. We do have 2 ingress-egress points from the northern interior road that is a part of the development, as well as 2 additional vehicular ingress and egress points that will come from Cornerstone to the south of the property. There are also pedestrian connections that will connect to the internal sidewalk from from Cornerstone, as well as that internal road that is connected to the site. The landscaping for the project has been reviewed for compliance and does satisfy the LDC as well as the PD and is found to be acceptable. The building design, of course, as well, does have those designs that are consistent with the uses that are being presented, and they have found to be acceptable as well. As you can see, the larger version of this site plan was presented to you in your packet. If you have brought that with you, it's a much bigger site there for you to be able to look at. You can also here be able to see what the elevations are going to look like from north, south, east, and west, and then of course what the color scheme is going to be. In addition, we can be able to also see elevations for the site, the second building that actually also represent the retail spaces that are going to be there. Again, we're looking at 6 at this time. Prior to the issuance of site plan approval, all of the technical aspects of the project will be resolved. We also have noticed a couple of things that we've had some challenges with, and we want to make sure that prior to permits being approved by both, we're making sure that we're getting them looked at by both the city and the county. So we can approve this site plan is one thing, but they have to then go to Volusia County to be able to get the permit because it's coming off of the county road. We want to make sure that everything is aligned. So we are asking that they take a look at that and just make sure that everything is in order. We've had some little hiccups in the past, so we're trying to make sure that we address that issue going forward. Also, the traffic impact analysis process will have to be completed. We're very far along. In fact, just today, we got the final stamp of approval from Volusia County on the language for the agreement. We'll go ahead and get our signed administratively, send it over to Volusia County. If they can get it by a specific time, they're looking at getting it onto the agenda for county council for their meeting, I think, on the 12th of February. Now, provided all outstanding conditions are resolved appropriately, staff does recommend that the planning board approve the major site plan proposing the construction of retail space between 2 buildings with site improvements, inclusive of water, sewer, and drainage on 6 plus or minus acres of land. A majority vote of the planning board members that are present and voting today is required to approve this application. This does conclude staff's report. I believe that there's a representative from the...
I don't know, but before that, Paula, any questions for Paula? Seeing none, thank you. Great job. Okay. And do we have the applicant here? Well, seeing none there, we'll move smartly along then. Have to have questions for someone who's not here. We have no speakers for or against this item, so I would ask for a motion on agenda item 4D.
How can you pass it with a representative not being here?
Oh, on this? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. I'm sorry, Ann. Ann, please, come on up. This is sorry, Ann, I missed it. My apologies.
That's okay. There's a lot of them. I just wanted to speak, Ann Ruby, 137 Park Avenue. I wanted to speak that I'm very much in favor of this. I can't wait. That's all. Thank you.
Great. That was a lot easier than our previous. Okay, going back to any other for or against? I don't believe so. Onward to motion for item 4D, please.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve major site plan approval, DV 2024-247 Sprouts at Daytona.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Now, Paula, we get to talk about car dealerships, don't we? That's right. Item 4E, Madam Secretary, if you would.
Yes, excuse me, item 4E, Tomoka Farms Road Auto Dealership, Site Plan DEV 2024-342, quasi judicial hearing.
You're from staff. Paula,
It's
two
me
for two.
again.
Wow.
Oh, my
Now
goodness.
we get to
It's a
talk about a
twofer.
fancy Audi
Yeah,
dealership.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, and once again, we are here tonight to present a request by Hudak of Zev Cohen and Associates on behalf of Frank Hamner, I don't know why I can't say that right, I tried, of CVJCR Properties Limited, LLLP, to approve a major site plan constructing Phase 1 of an automotive dealership inclusive of 39,956 square feet space of building, parking area, sales lot, utilities, and stormwater infrastructure on 10.2 acres of land, or 10.2 plus or minus acres of land. Okay, so this site, it's a little bit oddly shaped, as we can see, but it is located between I-95 and Tomoka Farms Road North. It is vacant and undeveloped currently. We are looking at developing the northern portion, you would say, not into the triangular portion, just a little bit lower than that. This is a two-phase development. The future land use on the property is general industry. It is surrounded by the same to the north, west, and south, and to the east is golf and a little bit of level 1 residential there. It is part of a planned development, and as we can see, there's some SFR 5 there to the east, and it is surrounded by planned development as well. A little bit of history about the property. There's not much. This PD has been around for a long time. March 2018 is when this PD actually was approved by City Commission. There was a little something that happened between March of 2020 and, yes, that little thing called COVID. And with that, along with a lot of other properties and their developments, it did receive an extension on this development with a series of executive orders that were issued by the governor of Florida, which started March 9th of 2020, and the last order expired on July 1st of 2021. That's all that's happened with this one, amazingly, but this is not one that had a lot of revisions or anything. As we can see with this project, it does have adequate parking. There is a little bit more parking, again, on this one than is actually required. We do have additional vehicle connections from this. We have one actual vehicle ingress exit point that will connect from North Tomoka Farms Road. The pedestrian connection will connect to the internal system to North Tomoka Farms Road, again at the egress point. The landscaping plan for the project has been reviewed for compliance and is in line with the LDC as well as the PD plan, and it is found to be acceptable. That building design, it's very sleek, is proposed to be in line with the use for that property, and of course, it is going to be all that we hope, because there isn't one of these for quite some distance away from us. So I know people are very excited about getting this one here. As you can be able to see here, you did receive a copy of this in a larger format in your packet previously. And here it is. The Tomoka Farms Road Auto Dealership will be Audi.
Rumor had it.
Yes, exactly. So again, people are very excited, I'm sure, to not have to drive distances to be able to get their Audi serviced. Prior to site plan approval letter issuance, again, we will have to make sure that all technical aspects are satisfied. That same item that we discussed in the last project, making sure that the permits are in line, that are approved are in line with what we need here for the movement inside the site as well. And again, all of the traffic impact analysis processes will be completed, inclusive of any agreement and payments that need to be made before we actually sign on the dotted line. Provided all of those outstanding conditions are resolved appropriately, staff does recommend the planning board approve the major site plan proposing the construction of an automotive dealership inclusive of 39,956 square feet of building, parking area, sales lot, utilities, and stormwater infrastructure on 10.2 plus or minus acres of land. A majority vote of the planning board members present and voting is required to approve this application.
Very good. Good job, Paula. Questions for Paula on this item?
Okay.
Seeing none, could we hear from the applicant that I see him already up, ready to come on up? Name and address if you would, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, planning board members. My name is Luke Kulich. I am an engineer with Zev Cohen and Associates, 300 Interchange Boulevard, Ormond Beach, Florida. I'm very excited about this project. I'm a big fan of the brand. I was actually born in Europe. I always considered purchasing an Audi myself, but as Paula mentioned, the closest one is in Orlando, so I kind of talked myself out of it. Very excited about it myself. I have a couple pretty renderings here to pass along so that you can actually see what it's going to look like.
Thank you.
A little bit of background on the site. I believe back in 2023, the site was cleared. The retention pond was dug out on the north end. Compensating storage area was excavated on the south side. As you can see from the aerial views, it's the wet area. So the majority of the, site work was completed. Site was partially filled. So really, we're just coming in with the site plan approval to start construction.
Very good. Any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for the rendition, too.
Of course.
Looks impressive, really does.
Yes.
Okay. And I do believe we do have a speaker. Ann, if you'd like to speak. Not you?
Next
4F.
Sorry, I want the next one about the.
Oh, okay,
Sorry, I may
okay.
have been asleep.
Okay, well, no problem. We'll get this all figured out. Okay. And let's see, so no other speakers other than I thought Ann. Okay, moving forward, for a motion for item 4E, please.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve major site plan approval, DV 2024-342, Tomoka Farms Road, Auto Dealership Phase 1.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Okay, moving to item 5A.
Item
Oh, what I miss?
4F.
4F?
Yeah.
Okay.
4F.
Oh, I apologize, you're right. Okay, yeah, 4F, what the heck? Okay, item 4F, Madam Secretary, please. Save me
Certainly.
from myself here.
Glitch Bill Land Development Code Text Amendment, DEV 2024-690, legislative hearing.
Very good, okay. Dennis, I'm assuming this is your baby.
This will be me. Yeah,
Okay,
if
go get 'em.
if my voice holds out. This is a request by Growth Management and Planning Department, the Planning Division, to amend Articles 6 and 11 of the Land Development Code to correct, update, and modified standards in the Land Development Code to better manage development in the city. As I mentioned earlier today, we often take Land Development Code text amendments before the Planning Board and the City Commission for approval for various reasons. Oftentimes, if we have the opportunity to take multiple text amendments together at the same time, maybe some of the lower hanging fruit, we try to do that. This is one of those cases. So we do have a few things, and a lot of these are modifications that we see in a lot of the PD agreements that come forward that make sense for us to add to the Land Development Code to allow it to happen as times change. So the first one is to allow vehicle stacking for multifamily uses and driveways to meet parking requirements. This is something that we see that's permitted right now with single-family duplex mobile homes. You see the picture on the left is just a standard driveway with a garage. That's a stacking, and that's how that works. See the picture on the right-hand side? That is an apartment complex that has a garage, and it has a driveway to access the garage in front of it. This amendment would allow multifamily, in this case, to be able to use that driveway as a stacking space. That driveway is dedicated to the person who has access to the garage, So it's not like they'd be blocking a space for the person with the garage, much like the single family. But this was something that because we see a lot more apartment complexes with garages, it allows us to save some pavement area by using that driveway as a required parking space. Next one is a provision to add compact car spaces. This is something that we've seen a lot of PDs do. We wrote, and we see a lot of communities doing a compact car space alternative. Some of the requirements that we're going to be adding to the code, the compact car space has to be a minimum of 8.5 feet by 17 feet. Standard size is 9 by 19. No more than 20% of the required parking can be designated for compact cars, and compact car spaces need to be marked and posted. The next one is a requirement for bicycle parking. What we want to try to do is encourage alternative forms of transportation. Sometimes people want to take a bike. They don't feel safe taking a bike because maybe they don't have a place to put their bicycle once they get to a location. This is a requirement when you have parking spaces that are required. They're required to put in a bike, a secure bike area for somebody riding a bicycle. So for every 10 parking spaces, they're required to have one space for a bike. And I should point out in a land development code, we also allow in a different section reductions to parking if somebody provides, if a developer provides a certain number of bicycle spaces and shower facilities. This requirement that we're asking for is in addition to that, so they won't be able to double dip on that. They still have to get their minimum, and if they want to go through the other process, they're going to have to add even more bike parking spaces. So,
yeah, makes sense.
Next one is excuse me, is a provision to allow motorcycle parking in the city. Daytona Beach has a lot of motorcycles. We see them all over the place. Motorcycle parking requires less space, but when you see a motorcycle in a car spot, it's taking up more space than it really needs to. So this is for developments, and we're gonna kind of roll this out slow. So we're gonna do it for developments that require over 100 parking spaces, just to see how it's gonna work out. And then we're going to limit it to only 3% of the required parking spaces can be motorcycle. The spaces have to be 4 feet by 10 feet, and the motorcycle spaces have to be identified by signs or pavement delineation. So we're going to do this, and we're going to monitor it, and if we need to adjust it, we will in the future, but we think this is a good start for us. The next one is signage. We see this a lot for PDs. For master developments, when they ask for off-site signage, the reality is it's not off-site signage. This is signs that are for a development, for a master plan. In this particular case, not all of those tenants are located on the lot that sign is located, and because of that, that's considered off-site signage. We're saying now with our land development code that is not considered off-site signage if it's part of the same development. So they'll be able to do that. It's not going to be a modification anymore to the code. This next one is actually just something Dana Lee caught. We had done a text amendment a couple of years ago where we changed the height of light poles. This was another section of the code that also referenced light pole heights, and we didn't make this change at that time, and she caught it, and so this is a change to just make that correction, and that's what that'll do. So it's from the 30 feet to 25 feet when it's near the residential areas. This next one is something we've been looking at. This is for a payment in lieu of installing trees. There's two different ways that this would work. One is if a site is in an urbanized area, or there's just some reasons why they cannot plant those trees in those locations. We don't want them to force the issue and just plant trees just to plant trees if they're not going to survive. So we give them the option in those situations to pay into the in lieu of fee. The payments will go into a fund that the Public Works Department uses for trees in the city and irrigation and other things, so that we can use it for that. So the previous fee in the land development code was $500. We're going to be bumping that up to $1,000. I think that the $500 is just a little bit low, and as a matter of fact, we've a couple of prices for installation of trees, and so that's why we're going up to $500.
Yeah, I was just curious, how long has the $500 fee been? How long
As long as I've been here.
Okay, so it's been a while, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yes. The next one is more of a punitive. This is when somebody's removing trees that they're not authorized to remove. The previous fee was $1,500, and we're going to bump it up to $2,000. So if somebody is illegally removing trees, and we find out about it, we're gonna hit them with the $2,000 per tree removed. Or they can replant the trees, and when they replant the trees, they got to plant more trees than they've removed. The code has a requirement for that they have to do additional replacement trees.
So if there's a tree on my property, would that apply to me? If I cut it down without getting...
If you're required to have a tree on your property and you remove the tree without authorization to remove your tree, that could apply to you.
What's the requirement, though?
It depends on your property. I think you're required to have one tree on your lot. It really also depends on how much frontage you have. The wider your frontage, the more trees are required on a single-family lot. Some PD agreements actually have certain requirements that you have to have a certain amount of trees over there. Sometimes it doesn't say what kind of tree that you have to have on a lot. It could be a shade tree, it could be a small tree. So it really depends on the location. So if you're going to think about removing a tree, and also if it's a historic, if it's a historic tree,
Yes.
I would suggest you do not do that. So call the city first and ask.
2,000 reasons not to.
And you probably need a permit to remove that tree
That's
anyway.
right.
So keep that in mind. So the last one we have is Article 11. And this deals with what we call block face averaging. Land Development Code allows for, let me do this now. I'll get to that in a second. Land Development Code allows for block face averaging for certain development standards, whether it's a setbacks, front setbacks, side setbacks, lot area, lot width. If you take a look at all of the houses or all of the developments on that one lot, you can take the average of whatever the standard is, and you can use it for that particular lot. For example, if you have a full block and all of the lots have an average of a 20-foot setback for the front setback, and there's a vacant lot, and the code requires you to have a 30-foot setback, a 30-foot setback wouldn't fit in with the neighborhood, wouldn't fit in with the block. It would stick out like a sore thumb. So this is the opportunity to install a house over there that would actually fit into the neighborhood. And that's the whole point of the block face averaging, that you're able to be consistent with what's in the surrounding area. The LDC, as I said, already permits the block face averaging for a lot area, lot width, and yard setbacks. We're adding lot depth. We've got a lot of lots that don't have that depth, and it's interesting because you got a lot of houses that are developed with maybe a 90-foot depth, but because somebody wants to come in and they want to build a house on a 90-foot depth, they're not able to do it because the code doesn't allow them to do that. But if they did the block face averaging, they'd be allowed to do it, and it wouldn't be an issue.
Okay.
They normally would have to get a variance. The other thing that we're doing with this amendment. One of the problems that we have, here's an example. You see there's a nice clean look at the blocks. So when we do a block face average, we're going to look at this block and determine, what is the setback for all of those houses, and we'll get the average. What is the lot area for all of those lots, and we'll get the average if somebody were to do something. It's nice and clean in a lot of these areas. Where it's not easy to do this is on properties that are along the riverfront. When they're west of Peninsula or when they're east of Atlantic, all of these lots are very different sizes. Setbacks are all different setbacks. It's very difficult to do a block face average, especially when you don't have blocks, because blocks are usually between streets, and when you get to the waterfront, you don't have streets running to the waterfront. So these blocks sometimes can be a half a mile long. So we're going to eliminate the properties that are east of Atlantic and west of Peninsula and Halifax. And you see, it's just the lots they're all very different. So this was specifically written for all properties that are kind of on the waterfront, with the last street that really is east of those lots. So west of Halifax, when you're north of ISB, and you see how that breaks down over there, and it's west of Peninsula when you're south of ISB. so that all of those, they wouldn't be allowed to use a block face average for those properties. If somebody wanted to get a modification to the code, they would be required to go through the variance process to be able to do that. They couldn't use a block face average.
Okay.
So that is that's it for the text amendments for right now. The staff does recommend approval to amend Articles 6 and 11 of the Land Development Code. A majority vote of the planning board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the City Commission. The item is tentatively scheduled, heard by the City Commission for first reading on March 5th, 2025, and second reading March, I think it's 19, 2025.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. That's a great job. And now, Ann Ruby, come on.
Thank you, Ann Ruby, 137 Park Avenue. I keep trying to move to Sandy's house. So it occurred to me as I was listening to the arguments tonight about the golf course, everybody was talking about traffic. We have to get traffic capacity. We have to be able to handle the cars. At some point, we will run out of the ability to build enough roads to handle all the cars. This is coming. You can't eliminate flooding if you pave over everything so you can drive everywhere. So as you're talking about modifying the LDC, I would hope that there could be some requirements put in there to start including mass transit funds. Like there should be a West Side transfer plaza. There should be good bus service up and down the West Side, up and down Williamson, over to Clyde Morris. You could put in a light rail system. We're going to have to start looking at building mass transit, and that should be part of how we're doing big developments. So I would just urge, if there's any way that some really smart person could figure out how to put that language in there and make a requirement, or you know how we're going to do a fund for affordable housing, maybe we could do a fund for mass transit, but at some point, we cannot just keep building roads so that everybody can drive a giant pickup truck with one person in it. So, yeah, that's you, Bert, sorry. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Ann. Okay. All right then. No other speakers, I do not believe. So I ask for a motion for item 4F, please.
Okay, I make a motion, we approve LDC text amendment, corrections up the modification, DV 2024-690, amending Article 6 and 11 of the LDC.
Perfect. Do we have a second? Second. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. All right, move to item 5. Move to, that'd be 5A? Yes, it'd be 5A. The Downtown Redevelopment Area Board. Any report, please? I'm not hearing
They're
a
not
lot.
here.
Yeah, okay.
Midtown Redevelopment Area Board.
Yes.
Did not meet.
Okay, moving forward with that. How about Beachside?
Did not meet.
Did not meet. And just to keep the party going, affordable housing didn't either. So there we go. Okay, moving into public comments. And Mr. Nicholson has something to educate us on, I'm sure. So please come up, John.
Or historian.
This is addressed to Kathy Washington. John Nicholson, 413 North Grandview Avenue. Would you want to state the three of them, Kathy?
What's that? Repeat that. Repeat what you said. I did what you said.
Would you like to state the three of them that I'm going to say? It's been a while. It has been a
know
while.
what you're going to say. Go right ahead.
All right.
We've been talking about it for 20 years or more.
20 years. Okay. Floor area ratio, submerged land, and hotel parking.
Yes.
Just went to a meeting. We're getting hopefully a 4-star hotel on the beach. I mean, a 5-star hotel on the beach side.
Whoa.
Right? It will have a restaurant in it. Okay? And our land development code requires that they have parking in addition to their hotel parking for the restaurant parking that anybody else would have parking. So to me, it doesn't make sense when we're building these hotels, when people are in the hotel, they're not going to get in their car and drive to another parking space to go to the restaurant downstairs. All right? It does not make sense. And this was brought up 20 years ago. And I know in our code, we kind of fudged this a little bit, but I would really like a discussion because there's 2 really big hotels coming in. We've lost 17 hotels. We'll probably put back 10 of them. 3 are in the process right now. So if we can do it before rather than after they go through this. I know I spoke years ago about the parking in shopping centers, all right? We required massive amount of parking because twice a year, there was a need for it. Now everybody's online, we don't need 6,000 parking spaces at our shopping centers because most of people now hit a few buttons and it comes in the mail the next day. So I'm asking you to look at this because it's expensive to put in these parking spaces. Someone just made a comment, they're almost like $30,000 a space. So if we're doing that, it's quite expensive. So again, please look at that. Please discuss submerged land. We had this again 20 years ago on Beach Street. Someone wanted to put a hotel on Beach Street, and there was the street, a sidewalk, and the building, and nothing else. And they would have to load and unload on a roadway, and it would block traffic going into the development beyond it. So if we could find some way of looking at submerged land now so that doesn't happen. I know we did the submerged land next to Seabreeze Bridge, and all those people would have lost their riparian rights, which actually they have lost. So it doesn't affect a lot of places, but I think there were, 3 or 5 of them. So I'd rather us deal with it before it comes up again to screw the people that are dealt with it. All right, thank you.
Thank you, John. All righty, staff.
Just one comment. The next planning board meeting is going to be, will not be available for the meeting. So we were going to poll the rest of the planning board members just to make sure that we were going to be able to have a quorum for that meeting. So if y'all, unless there's, if there was going to be a problem, then maybe we'd be looking at a different meeting date to be able to have that. But if everybody was going to be here, then we can have the meeting without Mr. McLean if we have a quorum.
I don't see anyone saying they can't, they're going to join me wherever I'm going, so that sounds good.
Good, thank you.
Actually, it's a nonprofit fundraiser that we do in our neighborhood, and I'm presenting some things. It's an annual thing, I have to be there, unfortunately.
I'm not sure if I'm going to be here. But, I understand it's tonight I'm going to be here, but
You're not here,
Sure.
we're not gonna have a quorum.
And then we'll also talk to Mr. Servance, because if he's here, then we do have our quorum, we have our 4.
Okay.
Jamie has resigned from the board. I thought I had mentioned that. Maybe I didn't.
No, I hadn't
I
heard
apologize.
that. I wondered what was going on.
Yes, Jamie has resigned and will be refilling that role. And the city commission will, I'm sorry? Currently, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the redistricting,
Yeah,
that's
we-
going to be like,
right.
Okay, any other comments from the board? With that, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.